Hi guys, tonight we're going to leave behind the soft glow of electric lights, the quiet hum of refrigerators, and the familiar comfort of locked doors, and travel back 100,000 years to a world without cities, roads, farms, or written names. You are standing at the edge of a wide grassland beneath a darkening sky. A small fire crackles nearby. Smoke curls upward into the cool air, carrying the scent of dry wood, warm ash, and roasted roots. Somewhere beyond the light, insects pulse in the grass, and a night bird calls once, then falls silent. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, leave a comment telling us where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights and let the modern room around you begin to fade. You take one slow step forward, and the floor beneath you becomes dry earth. The walls disappear. The ceiling opens into a vast sky, scattered with stars sharper and brighter than any you usually see. There is no distant highway, no aircraft blinking overhead, and no blue light from a phone demanding your attention. Humanity has not invented notifications yet, which may already make this era sound surprisingly advanced. You've arrived roughly 100,000 years ago. This is not the beginning of humanity, and it is not an age of half-formed creatures stumbling without thought. Human evolution has already been unfolding for millions of years in Africa. People belonging to our own species, Homo sapiens, are living in small mobile communities elsewhere. Other human populations occupy their own landscapes. Neanderthals live across parts of Europe and Western Asia, while other groups move through regions farther east. The world is often cooler than today, though climate never stays still. Wetter periods give way to drier ones. Grasslands expand, lakes shrink, and coastlines shift as sea levels rise and fall. Yet the land before you is not a frozen emptiness, depending on the region. You might find savanna, woodland, river valley, desert edge, or coastal plain. Tonight, you are near a seasonal river in Africa. The sun has slipped below the horizon, leaving a dull gold band in the west. The earth still holds warmth, but the air is cooling. You feel it on your arms and along your neck. Your clothing may be a hide wrapped around the body, perhaps held with cord. Archaeology rarely preserves clothing from this deep past, so researchers rely on indirect evidence and practical clues. You notice the people near the fire. There may be 20 of them, though the number changes through the year. Some are relatives, others may have joined through partnerships or alliances. There are adults, children, and an older person whose movements are careful, but whose memory seems valuable. No one wears a crown. No one holds a meeting that could have been a hand gesture. Life here is organized through relationships. Food does not come from farming. Agriculture lies far in the future. People gather wild plants, dig for roots, collect nuts and fruit, hunt animals, trap smaller creatures, and search riverbanks or shorelines. This flexibility is one of humanity's strengths. You survive not by controlling nature, but by noticing it closely. That attention is everywhere. A woman crouches near camp, turning a wooden shaft in her hands. A child watches her fingers. Another adult sorts sharp stone flakes on a hide. Someone near the river lifts their head toward a distant sound. These gestures are small, but none are careless. A broken branch, changing wind, or sudden silence among birds can carry information. At first, the landscape may look empty. To the people beside you, it is filled with memory. A cluster of bushes may hold edible berries after rain. A pale line of stone may lead toward water. A grove in the distance may attract animals at dawn. The riverbed may be safe in one season and troublesome in another. One mainstream fact about early human life is that people usually lived in small, mobile groups and relied heavily on cooperation. No one person could find every food, remember every water source, care for every child, make every tool, and watch for every danger alone. Survival depended on shared knowledge. And here is a quieter, lesser-known detail. Some stone tools from this broad period were made from rock carried many kilometers from its natural source. People were not always picking up the nearest stone and hoping for the best. They knew which materials fractured well and sometimes transported them over long distances. Even in deep prehistory, humans had preferences, apparently. Traveling for better equipment is an ancient habit. You move closer to the fire. Its light slides across faces, catching the shine of eyes and pale edges of stone. The flames are modest. Fuel is useful, and no one wastes it for decoration. Thick branches rest over glowing coals, while smaller pieces wait nearby. The fire offers warmth, light, protection, and a place to prepare food. It also forms a social centre where people rest and watch one another. Researchers continue to question how regularly different human groups could create fire on demand. Rather than preserve embers or carry hot coals from place to place, by around 100,000 years ago, many communities clearly used fire repeatedly, but the exact methods and reliability remain debated. You lower yourself onto the ground. The surface is firm, scattered with dry grass and small pebbles. A hide lies near the warm side of the fire. When you touch it, it feels stiff in places and smooth in others. Smoke drifts toward you, making your eyes water. No one apologizes. Prehistoric customer service is still developing. Beyond the camp, darkness gathers beneath the trees. You hear distant hoofbeats, then movement near the riverbank. No one panics. One adult adds a branch to the fire. Another shifts closer to a wooden point kept within reach. The response is calm because fear alone is not useful. Knowledge is useful. Experience is useful. Staying close is useful. You look upward. The stars appear enormous, without artificial light. The sky feels less like a ceiling and more like a depth. The people around you have no written astronomy, but they know the night. They have watched the moon change and noticed how animals, plants, rain, and temperature follow patterns. You are beginning your first night in this vanished world. Nothing here is simple, yet nothing is hurried. Each sound has space around it. Each movement has purpose. The fire settles into a steady crackle. The river breathes beyond the reeds, and the group draws closer as the cold deepens. For now. You do not need to understand everything. You only need to sit beside the fire, feel its warmth against your skin, and let the deep past slowly become familiar. The fire has burned lower now, and the group around you has settled into a shape that feels almost like a room, even though there are no walls. Bodies create the boundaries. A few people rest close to the warmth, others sit nearer the darkness, where they can listen to the river and the grass beyond. Children have drifted toward familiar adults. An older woman lies on her side with one hand beneath her cheek. while a young man checks the edge of a stone tool by running his thumb carefully along its surface. You begin to understand that this travelling band is more than a collection of individuals. It is a web of memory, obligation, trust, and habit. There may be 15 people here tonight, or perhaps 25. A pair may leave to visit another group, while another family joins for part of the season. Early human communities were likely flexible, and that flexibility helped them survive in landscapes where food and water shifted with the seasons. You notice that no one seems entirely alone. A child wakes and begins to fuss. Before the sound grows louder, an adult reaches over, pulls the child closer, and murmurs softly. The adult may be a parent, but not necessarily. In small communities, care is often shared. Relatives and trusted companions can all help raise a child. One mainstream fact about human evolution is that our species depends on prolonged childhood. Human children take many years to learn the skills needed for survival. They must learn safe plants, animal tracks, fire, tools, and the moods of others. This long period of learning is difficult, but it also allows knowledge to pass from one generation to the next. You watch a girl of perhaps 7 years old sitting beside the woman with the wooden shaft. The girl holds a smaller piece of wood and copies the motion she sees. Her movements are clumsy at first. The point slips. She frowns. The older woman does not take the task away. Instead, she slows her own hands and repeats the gesture. There is no school bell, no classroom, no worksheet asking the child to label the parts of a spear. Learning happens through watching, copying, correcting, and trying again. The girl adjusts her grip. This time, the motion is smoother. Across the fire, 2 men exchange a few quiet sounds and gestures. One points toward the river, the other nods, then glances toward the sky. They may be discussing where to search for food at dawn, or perhaps whether the weather will change. You cannot know the exact words, but their communication is clearly rich. Expression, tone, posture, and experience fill in what sound alone cannot carry. The band survives because information moves through it. One person remembers a hidden spring. Another recognizes a useful tree. Someone else knows how to find dry fuel after rain. No single person knows everything. But together, the group holds a library without shelves, and you might wonder, how do people decide who leads? There is probably no single ruler giving orders all day. Leadership may shift according to the task. The best tracker may guide a hunt. An older gatherer may decide when certain routes are ready. A strong swimmer may lead a river crossing. A calm speaker may settle an argument. Some historians suggest that many hunter-gatherer communities favoured relatively flexible and shared forms of decision-making, while others caution that social structures probably varied greatly between regions and groups. The truth may be less tidy than any single model. Human beings have always been talented at cooperation and disagreement. Often within the same afternoon, you feel a small breeze move through camp. It carries the smell of mud from the river and the sharper scent of smoke. Someone adds a twist of dry grass to the embers. A thin flame rises, illuminating faces for a moment, then settles again. Food from earlier has been placed near the centre. A few roasted roots remain, along with pieces of meat and cracked shells. The portions are shared according to need, custom, age, or contribution. A nursing mother receives food. A child is handed a soft piece. The older woman beside the fire is offered something easy to chew. Sharing food is not simply kindness, it is insurance. A hunter may fail today and succeed tomorrow. A gatherer may find fruit one week and nothing the next by sharing. The group spreads risk. You do not need to be lucky every day if your companions are willing to share their luck with you. A quirky detail from research into foraging societies is that people sometimes maintain social connections across surprisingly large distances. Gifts, visits, partnerships, and marriage ties can connect separate bands over wide areas. Such relationships may exchange information and provide support during hardship, so the group around you is not the whole social world. Beyond the darkness, other fires may be burning. Some belong to relatives, some belong to friends, some belong to strangers. Some groups are trusted, while others are avoided. A necklace of shells, a familiar style of tool, or a pattern of pigment could signal connection, even without roads or written maps. People may understand networks of movement and belonging. You notice two adults sitting slightly apart. Their voices are low, one gestures sharply, then looks away, the other waits. There is tension, but no explosion. After a while, an older man shifts closer and says something brief. The first adult exhales, the second nods. Conflict exists here. Of course, there are disagreements over food, partners, movement, effort, and responsibility. Yet constant violence would damage a small group quickly. Every skilled adult matters, every child requires years of care, and every elder carries memory. So people learn to manage irritation. They joke, they withdraw, they persuade, they forgive, though perhaps not immediately in that way. The camp feels familiar. You may not understand the language, but you recognize the rhythms. Someone is tired. Someone is proud. Someone wants attention. Someone would prefer that another person stop making that particular sound with a stick. Human nature has not changed as much as the landscape. The girl with a wooden shaft finally produces a point that pleases her. She lifts it toward the older woman. The woman turns it in the firelight, studies it, and gives a small approving smile. The girl smiles back. This moment will leave no fossil. No archaeologist will uncover the expression, the patience, or the quiet pride. Yet such moments must have happened countless times. Skills were not passed down by stone alone. They were passed through affection, imitation, correction, and trust. You lie back slightly, letting the warmth reach your legs. Around you, the group breathes, shifts, murmurs, and settles. You're not merely surviving beside them. You're being held within a circle of people whose lives depend on one another. And for tonight, yours does too. As the night thins toward morning, you begin to notice your own body more clearly. The ground presses against your hip. Smoke clings to your hair and skin. Your shoulders feel the memory of yesterday's walking, carrying, crouching, and lifting. There is no mattress beneath you, no padded shoe waiting nearby, and no warm shower politely preparing itself in the next room. Yet your body is not helpless here. It has been shaped by a very long history of movement. Long before this night beside the river, your ancestors adapted to walking upright across varied landscapes. By 100,000 years ago, people of your species are capable travelers. They can walk for hours, carry food and children, climb when needed, and cross difficult ground with careful balance. You rise slowly as pale light begins to gather in the east. Your feet meet cool soil. The skin on the soles is tough, though not magically immune to cuts or thorns. You flex your toes and feel the uneven surface beneath them. Small stones, dry grass, and patches of damp earth all send information upward through your legs. Walking barefoot requires attention. You place each foot rather than simply dropping it. A modern pavement encourages you to move without thinking. Here, every step asks a small question. Is the ground stable? Is that branch sharp? Is the dark patch mud, shadow, or something better left undisturbed? You follow two adults toward the riverbank. Their pace is steady, not hurried. They move with an efficiency that comes from repetition. Their arms swing loosely. Their eyes shift between the path, the trees, and the open ground ahead. Even while walking, they are gathering information. One mainstream scientific fact about early Homo sapiens is that the human body is exceptionally well suited for endurance movement. Long legs, strong tendons, an upright posture, and the ability to sweat help humans travel over distance and manage heat. You may not be the fastest creature in the landscape, but speed is not the only useful talent. A gazelle can outrun you easily. It cannot plan a route, carry water, discuss strategy, or decide that perhaps everyone should rest beneath that particular tree before the sun becomes rude. You reach the river and kneel. The movement is smooth because squatting, bending, and sitting close to the ground are normal parts of daily life. Your joints are used in a wider range of positions than those of many modern adults. There are no chairs at every convenient height, so your body becomes the chair. You cup water in your hands. It is cold enough to make your fingers ache slightly. You drink slowly, watching the surface for movement. The river reflects a strip of silver sky, broken by reeds and drifting insects. Your hands deserve attention too. The human hand can grip powerfully, but it can also perform delicate work. Your thumb meets your fingers with precision. You can hold a heavy branch, twist plant fiber into cord, lift a tiny stone flake, or remove a thorn from a child's foot. The hand is strong because it is controlled. Later, near camp, you watch a man shape a wooden point. One hand steadies the shaft while the other scrapes it with stone. The motion is repeated hundreds of times. Thin curls of wood fall onto his leg. His fingers adjust pressure almost without visible thought. That control comes from practice as much as anatomy. A child may possess clever hands, but skill must still be learned. Muscles, attention, and memory work together until the movement becomes quiet and efficient. There is another feature you cannot ignore. You sweat. As the sun rises, warmth spreads across your shoulders. Tiny beads of moisture form along your skin. Humans have many sweat glands and relatively little body hair compared with most mammals. This helps release heat during activity. It is useful, though not especially glamorous. Prehistory contains many noble achievements, but it also contains a remarkable amount of dust sticking to damp skin. Your skin itself may vary in shade depending on ancestry and region. In the strong sunlight of Africa, darker pigmentation offers protection from ultraviolet radiation. Over many generations, skin color changes as human populations move into different environments. But here, beneath this brightening sky, skin is not decoration. It is part of the body's relationship with sunlight, heat, and health. You lift an arm and notice old marks. A faint scar crosses the forearm. Another sits near the knee. Life here leaves traces, thorn scratches, falls, insect bites, and burns are ordinary risks. The body heals many small injuries, though serious wounds remain dangerous. Researchers continue to debate exactly how different early human populations balanced endurance hunting, ambush hunting, scavenging, gathering, and other methods of obtaining food. Human bodies are capable of long-distance pursuit. But that does not mean every group use the same strategy in every environment. The landscape decides much. So do season, prey, tools, and tradition. You walk back toward camp carrying water in a hide container. The load pulls against one shoulder. Your body shifts automatically to keep balance. Another person carries a child on one hip, then changes sides after a while. A third returns with a bundle of branches held across the back. Carrying is a constant part of life. Food must be moved. Fuel must be collected. Infants must travel. Tools must come along. Possessions remain limited partly because every object has weight. Today, you might complain that a suitcase wheel is slightly noisy. Here, the absence of wheels is not a minor inconvenience. It shapes what you own, how far you move, and what you decide is worth keeping. A lesser-known detail about early human anatomy is that inner ear structures preserved in fossils can sometimes help researchers study balance and movement. The tiny canals inside the ear respond to changes in head position. Their form may offer clues about how extinct humans move through the world. It is a curious thought. Deep inside the skull, hidden from sight, rests a delicate system helping you remain upright while stepping across stones beside a river. You pause near the fire and roll your shoulders. Strength here does not resemble a modern contest. No one is measuring muscle for display. Useful strength is quiet. It is the ability to dig, lift, pull, carry, climb, and repeat those actions without wasting energy. Endurance matters more than spectacle. So does recovery. People rest whenever opportunity allows. They sit while repairing tools. They talk while preparing food. They pause in shade during the hottest part of the day. Activity comes in waves rather than following a clock that demands constant performance. You notice how differently everyone moves. The older woman takes shorter steps but wastes little motion. The child runs suddenly, stops, crouches, and runs again. A broad-shouldered man carries wood. A smaller adult works with quick, precise hands. There is no single ideal body. Each person contributes through a mixture of age, health, experience, and skill. Your body, too, is part of the group's shared survival. It carries knowledge in its habits. It remembers how to squat near the fire, how to place a foot on loose ground, and how to turn your face from smoke before your eyes begin to sting. As morning brightens, you stand among the others. Your muscles are tired, your skin is dusty, and your feet are already learning the path. You're not built for comfort. You're built for movement, attention, adaptation, and the long, patient work of staying alive. The morning grows warmer, and the camp begins to loosen around you. People rise, stretch, gather tools, and move toward the edges of the resting place. A child carries a bundle of dry grass. Two adults inspect the riverbank. Someone lifts a hide from the ground and shakes loose a fine layer of dust that flashes briefly in the sunlight. You soon realize that the group may not remain here much longer. The river has been useful, but the water is beginning to fall. Animal tracks crowd the mud near the bank, which means food may be close, but it also means larger creatures visit after dark. Fuel is becoming harder to collect nearby. The air has changed too, carrying a dry smell from the open country. A resting place is never chosen for comfort alone. It must offer water, food, fuel, visibility, and some protection from wind and rain. It should not sit directly on an animal trail. It should not flood after a storm. It should not be so enclosed that danger can approach unseen. In modern life, choosing a place to sleep may involve pillows, reviews, and whether breakfast is included. Here, the important question is simpler. Will this place keep everyone alive until morning by midday? The decision has been made. The band begins to move. You carry a hide folded over one arm and a small bundle of wood over the other shoulder. The fire has not been abandoned completely. A person near the front carries a smouldering piece of wood wrapped carefully with dry material, protecting a faint red glow if it survives the journey. The next camp can be lit without starting again from cold stone and tinder. The path leads away from the river and across low grassland. Heat rises from the earth. Small insects buzz near your face. The smell of smoke on your skin mixes with dust and sweat. Ahead, the landscape lifts gradually toward a line of rocky ground where scattered trees grow between pale stone outcrops. The group is heading toward shelter. One mainstream fact about early human life is that shelters varied greatly according to climate and landscape. Some people used caves or rock overhangs. Others likely built temporary windbreaks or simple structures from branches, hides, grass, and bone. There was no single prehistoric house used everywhere. Caves are useful, but they are not always available. They may already contain animals. They can be damp, cold, smoky, or difficult to defend. Some lie far from water. Others face the wrong direction and collect the evening wind. A cave may look impressive to a modern visitor and still be a terrible bedroom. You reach the rocky slope in the late afternoon. The sun is lower now, though the air remains warm. Shadows collect beneath the trees. The adults spread out and inspect several possible places. You follow an older man toward a shallow overhang in the stone. At first glance, it seems ideal. The roof slopes outward. The ground beneath is mostly dry. A wall of rock blocks the wind from one direction. There is enough open land in front to watch the surrounding area. Then the man crouches. He touches the soil and studies a set of marks near the back wall. They're not human footprints. A faint animal smell hangs in the shade, musky and sharp. Small bones lie beneath a crack in the rock. The place is already occupied, or at least regularly visited. The group moves on without argument. Farther along the slope, you find another overhang. This one is smaller, but the ground is clean. The opening faces away from the strongest wind. A cluster of trees stands nearby, offering branches and leaves. Water lies within walking distance, though not so close that the camp will sit among every thirsty animal in the region. People begin working immediately. No one announces the construction phase. Branches are dragged into place. Stones are cleared from the sleeping area. Dry grass is gathered and spread across the ground. A few people position thicker limbs against the rock to extend the sheltered space. Hides may be tied or draped over the frame, though the exact appearance depends on what the band owns and what the environment provides. You help carry branches. Their bark scratches your palms. Leaves brush against your neck and release a green, bitter scent. The work is repetitive but not frantic. Everyone seems to know what matters first. The fire area is prepared near the entrance, where smoke can escape. Sleeping spaces are arranged deeper inside, away from sparks and cold air. Tools are placed where they will not be stepped on. Fuel is stacked close enough to reach at night, but far enough from flame to avoid an unpleasant prehistoric surprise. A quirky archaeological detail is that researchers sometimes study the microscopic remains of ancient plant material and ash within cave floors. Tiny traces can reveal that people laid down grasses, burned plants, or repeatedly cleaned sleeping areas. Even a floor that looks like ordinary dirt may preserve hints of household routine. You spread a layer of dry grass beneath a hide. It is not soft in the modern sense, but it lifts your body from the cold stone. The grass crackles when you press it down. Dust rises into the slanting light. A child lies across it experimentally, rolls once, and appears satisfied. Humans have probably been improving beds for a very long time. Scholars remain divided on how elaborate temporary shelters were in different regions during this period. Organic materials decay, leaving little evidence behind. A ring of stones or a pattern of post holes may suggest a structure, but much of the original shelter has vanished. That absence can be misleading. A wooden frame, woven screen, or grass roof may disappear completely while stone tools remain. Archaeology remembers what survives, not everything that once existed. As evening approaches, the shelter begins to feel inhabited. A hide hangs near one side, reducing the breeze. Bundles of grass soften the ground. The fire glows near the entrance, and smoke slides along the rock ceiling before curling into open air. You sit near the back wall and place your hand against the stone. It is cool and slightly rough. The shelter holds the day's remaining warmth better than the open grassland. Outside, the temperature is already falling. Wind moves through the trees with a soft rushing sound. The group settles into familiar positions. Children and older people rest farther inside. Adults who may keep watch remain closer to the entrance. No rigid rule is spoken, but practical habits guide everyone. Those most vulnerable to cold receive the better protected spaces. The shelter is not silent. Someone coughs when smoke drifts inward. Grass rustles beneath shifting bodies. A wooden tool taps softly against stone. Outside, insects begin their evening rhythm, and a distant animal gives a low call from the valley. You notice that the entrance frames a narrow view of the sky. The first stars appear above the dark branches. Firelight flickers across the rock wall, revealing shallow cracks and pale mineral stains. For a moment, the shelter seems permanent. It is not. The band may stay several nights, several weeks, or only until resources change. A storm, an animal migration, or news from another group could send everyone moving again. Home is not a fixed building. Home is the fire, the sleeping grass, the familiar voices, and the knowledge that the people beside you will rise when you rise. The wind strengthens outside. It presses gently against the hide screen, but the branches hold. The rock blocks the coldest air. Warmth gathers around the fire and along the bodies resting nearby. You lie back on the dry grass. The surface whispers beneath you. Smoke and crushed leaves scent the air. Beyond the entrance, the world remains wide, dark, and restless. Inside, for tonight, you are sheltered. The wind continues to move outside the shelter, brushing through the trees and pressing softly against the hide screen near the entrance. Inside, the fire has become the center of everything. Its flames are not large. They rise only a little above the wood, bending when the breeze reaches them, beneath the orange light. A bed of red coals glows steadily, giving off a warmth that reaches your hands, your knees, and the side of your face turned toward it. You begin to understand that the fire is not simply burning, it is being watched. An older man sits closest to the embers. Every so often, he leans forward and shifts a branch with a stick. He does not stir the fire carelessly. He studies it. He notices which pieces are catching, which are smoking, and where the heat is fading. To you, the fire may seem calm and familiar. To the group, it is a living responsibility. One mainstream fact about prehistoric life is that controlled fire gave early humans several important advantages. It provided warmth, light, protection from some animals, and a way to cook food. It also created a social place where people could gather after dark. Yet using fire is not the same as making it. By 100,000 years ago, many human communities were using fire repeatedly. But starting a flame from nothing may still have required skill. Dry material, suitable tools, and favourable conditions. A fire allowed to die during cold or wet weather could become a serious problem. So the glowing coals are guarded. Before sleeping, someone places thicker wood over them, ashes drawn gently around the edges, slowing the loss of heat. In the morning, dry grass or bark may be laid across the remaining glow, then fed carefully until smoke becomes flame. You watch a woman gather thin strips of bark. She rolls them between her fingers, loosening the fibers. Beside her sits a bundle of dry grass, protected from damp by a folded hide. Small sticks have been arranged nearby in careful sizes, from thin twigs to thicker branches. This is preparation for morning. The tiniest material catches first, then slightly larger fuel is added. Only after the flame becomes stable can heavier wood be trusted to burn. You reach your hands closer to the heat. The skin tightens slightly. Smoke drifts toward you, and your eyes begin to sting. You turn your head, but the smoke follows, as smoke has apparently decided to do for every human being in every century. Someone across the fire smiles at your discomfort. Gentle amusement needs no translation. Near the edge of the flames, several roots have been placed in warm ash. Their outer skins darken as they cook. The smell is earthy and faintly sweet. Another piece of food rests on a heated stone, sizzling quietly. Cooking changes more than flavor. Heat softens tough plant fibers and makes some foods easier to chew and digest. It can reduce certain parasites and harmful microbes. It can also allow people to gain more energy from food that would otherwise be difficult to process. Researchers continue to debate exactly when regular cooking became central to human life. Some argue that it began far earlier than 100,000 years ago, while others believe the clearest evidence appears later and varies greatly by region. The argument remains difficult because fire leaves confusing traces. A natural wildfire can blacken soil, lightning can scorch a cave, ash can move through wind or water. Archaeologists must look closely at burned bones, heated stone, sediment, and the position of hearth remains before deciding whether humans controlled the flame. A quirky detail is that ancient ash can sometimes preserve microscopic crystals formed inside plants. These tiny particles, called phytoliths, may survive after leaves, grass, and wood have vanished. Under careful study, they can offer clues about what kinds of plants were burned. So even the smoke curling above you carries a hidden record. The group knows the nearby landscape through firewood. They know which trees provide hot coals, which branches produce too much smoke, and where dry material remains after rain. Children learn these differences by collecting fuel and watching what happens when each kind is placed in the hearth. A boy returns from outside with several branches. An adult breaks one and examines the center. It is still damp. The branch is set aside rather than placed directly on the fire, Wet wood would smoke heavily and cool the flames. The boy watches closely. Another lesson passes without a speech. As darkness deepens, the fire changes the shelter itself. The rock wall reflects a soft amber glow. Shadows move slowly across the ceiling. Faces appear and fade as people shift. Beyond the entrance, the night seems darker because your eyes have adjusted to the light. The flames create safety, but not complete safety. Some animals may avoid fire, others may remain curious, especially if food is nearby. Sparks can burn hides or dry grass. Smoke can irritate lungs and eyes. A poorly placed hearth can fill a shelter with choking air. So the fire must be controlled, not worshipped blindly. The group keeps the sleeping grass away from the hottest coals. Fuel is stacked to one side. Children are guided around the hearth until they understand its boundaries. A toddler reaches toward the glow. A woman gently pulls the small hand back and makes a warning sound. The child pauses, studies the flames, then leans against her leg. Fire teaches quickly, but the adults prefer the lesson to remain theoretical. You listen as conversation rises around the hearth. The darkness beyond the shelter has reduced movement, leaving time for repair, instruction, memory, and quiet social life. A tool is sharpened, fibre is twisted into cord, a story may be told, though you cannot follow every sound. Perhaps it concerns a hunt, a place, an ancestor, or an animal whose behaviour carries meaning. Fire extends the human day. Without it, darkness would narrow activity. With it, people can continue working and speaking long after sunset. The hearth becomes a place where knowledge is repeated and relationships are renewed. The older man near the coals adds one final branch. It catches slowly. A line of orange travels along the bark, then settles into a steady flame. Around you, voices become quieter. People lie down on grass and hide. The fire gives less light now, but more stable heat. Its crackle becomes irregular, leaving long spaces of silence between soft pops. You watch the embers. They brighten when air moves through them, then darken again beneath a thin layer of ash. For tonight, the flame does not need to rise. It only needs to remain. And as your eyes grow heavy, you understand why one person stays awake a little longer, listening to the wind, watching the shelter entrance, and guarding the small red heart of the camp. The first sign of morning is not light, it is sound. A bird calls from somewhere beyond the trees, a low, repeated note that seems to travel through the cool air. Another answers farther down the slope. Grass shifts near the shelter entrance, and for a few quiet moments, everyone remains still, listening. The fire has nearly disappeared beneath its ash. Only a dull red glow remains. The older man who watched it through the night leans forward, brushes the surface gently with a stick, and exposes a cluster of coals. A woman places dry grass over them. She bends close and blows with slow, measured breaths. Smoke rises first, then a tiny orange point appears. No one cheers. This is ordinary work, but it is important ordinary work. The flame catches the bark fibres, then reaches the smallest twigs. Soon the shelter fills again with the soft crackle you heard the night before. You sit up. Cold has gathered in the stone beneath you. The grass bedding feels flattened and slightly damp from breath and bodies. Your shoulders are stiff, and one foot has gone numb under a folded hide. The morning air touches your face as you move closer to the entrance. Outside, the world is pale blue and grey. Mist hangs above the lower ground near the river. The trees stand dark against the sky. Dew covers the grass, catching the first weak light in thousands of tiny points. The camp wakes gradually. There is no alarm, no sudden movement, and no single moment when the day officially begins. A child rolls toward the warmth. Someone coughs from the smoke. Another person steps outside to relieve themselves at a suitable distance from the shelter. Daily life begins through habit. The group does not need a written schedule. Morning tasks are repeated often enough that everyone knows what usually comes next. Fuel is gathered. Water must be checked. Tools are inspected. The weather is read. You follow 2 adults away from the shelter. The earth is cold under your feet, and the grass brushes wet against your ankles. The adults move quietly, scanning the ground. One pauses beside a patch of mud and crouches. Several tracks cross the surface. Some belong to small hoofed animals. Others are rounder and deeper. The edges are still sharp, suggesting they were made recently. The adult touches one print, then looks toward the valley. This is how the morning begins here, not by asking what time it is, but by asking what happened during the night. Tracks reveal who passed. Broken stems reveal direction. Droppings reveal diet and freshness. A silence among birds may reveal that a predator is near. Archaeological and ethnographic evidence both show that people living by hunting and gathering depend on detailed environmental knowledge. This knowledge is not vague instinct. It is learned observation, refined over years. You look at the tracks and see marks in mud. The person beside you sees movement, timing, size, and possibility farther on. The group reaches a shallow rise where the sky is more visible. Clouds sit low in the east. Their undersides are dark, but the wind is light. One woman lifts a hand and feels the air across her palm. Another studies the colour near the horizon. They are judging whether rain may come. Weather matters because every task depends on it. Rain can fill streams and soften roots, but it can also erase tracks, soak fuel, chill children, and make travel difficult. Heat can open new routes or turn water sources into mud. Wind can carry scent toward animals or away from them. The landscape is always changing, even when it seems still. You breathe in. The air smells of damp soil, smoke, and crushed leaves. Somewhere nearby, flowers release a faint sweetness. The coolness of dawn will not last long, so people use it carefully. A small group prepares to walk toward the river. Another gathers tools for searching farther inland. An older woman remains near the shelter with 2 children and a man whose ankle appears swollen. Work is divided, but not rigidly. Age, health, experience, and immediate need shape what each person does. One child is handed a small container and told to collect dry pieces of bark from beneath the overhang. The task is simple enough to learn, useful enough to matter. A lesser-known detail about prehistoric camps is that repeated daily activities can leave patterns in the ground. Archaeologists sometimes identify separate areas where people napped stone, cooked food, slept, or discarded remains, even without walls. Human beings organize space. You can see that organization around you. Sharp stone flakes lie in one area, away from where children sleep. Food remains a place beyond the main resting place. Fuel is stacked near the hearth. Water containers are kept in shade. The camp has no floor plan, yet it has order. You return toward the fire and receive a small piece of roasted root left from the previous night. Its outside is dry and dark, but the inside is soft. You chew slowly. Breakfast is not always a separate meal. Food may be eaten when available rather than according to a fixed clock. Some mornings begin with leftovers. Others begin with nothing but water and movement. The idea of 3 carefully timed meals would be unfamiliar here. Today. You are fortunate. The root is warm near the center. A child watches you eat, then holds out a hand with complete confidence. You break off a piece and pass it over. This too is part of mourning. Food moves between people, information moves between people. Responsibilities move between people. The group becomes active as the sun lifts higher. The mist thins. Insects begin to stir. The air warms enough that you no longer feel the night in your fingers near the shelter. A woman examines a stone point under the growing light. A fracture runs along one edge. She turns it several times, testing whether it can be repaired. The light of morning is valuable for close work. At night, the fire distorts colour and shadow. At dawn, cracks, fibres, wounds, and tracks become easier to see. Researchers do not fully agree on how long early human groups stayed at individual camps. Some sites may represent brief stops of only a night or two, while others appear to have been used repeatedly across seasons or generations. The answer likely depended on water, food, safety, and social plans. This shelter may be temporary, yet the morning routines feel settled. Someone clears yesterday's ash. Someone checks the hide screen. Someone gathers the flattened grass and spreads part of it where sunlight can dry it. Small acts preserve comfort. Not luxury, perhaps, but comfort. There is a difference. You step outside again and look across the valley. Sunlight reaches the river now, turning it bright between the reeds. Birds rise from the grass in a sudden loose cluster, then settle farther away. One of the adults near you points toward them. The birds may have been disturbed by an animal or by another group moving beyond sight. Everyone watches for a moment. Then the tension passes. The camp returns to its rhythm. No bells ring. No leader announces the day. There are simply light, warmth, hunger, memory, and the shared understanding that the hours ahead must be used well. You stand in the ancient dawn with smoke clinging to your hair and cold dew drying on your legs. The night has ended quietly. The day begins the same way, not with urgency, but with attention. The morning has warmed enough for the damp grass to lose its shine. You leave the shelter with 3 women, an older boy, and a child who walks beside them carrying a small woven container. The group moves toward a lower ground, where the soil is darker and the plants grow more densely near a bend in the river. Before anyone begins gathering, they pause, they look. This part of the day depends on knowing what the landscape can offer and what it may conceal. There are no planted fields, no marked paths, and no signs announcing which leaves are safe. Food is scattered across the land in roots, seeds, fruit, insects, nuts, shoots, and underground storage organs to an unfamiliar eye. The vegetation forms a wall of green and brown to the people beside you. It is arranged into possibilities. One woman points toward a low plant with broad leaves. She kneels, presses her fingers into the soil, and begins loosening the earth around its base. The older boy watches the angle of her hands when the soil gives way. She pulls free a thick root coated in dark mud. She does not bite into it immediately. First, she examines the skin, breaks the tip, and smells the pale flesh inside. Then she places it in the container. This knowledge has been learned over generations. People living 100,000 years ago did not survive on meat alone. Plant foods were often essential, though their importance varied by place and season. Roots and tubers could provide dependable energy. Fruits offered sugar and moisture. Nuts and seeds could be rich in fat, but they might require cracking, grinding, soaking, or roasting. The land provides food, but rarely without effort. You kneel beside another plant and copy the woman's movement. The soil is firm near the surface, then softer below. Your fingers strike a small stone. You move around it and pull again. The root comes free suddenly. Mud covers your hands and settles beneath your nails. The child beside you laughs softly, perhaps because you have used far too much force for such a modest prize. The root is added to the others. No one gathers everything. Some plants are left untouched because they are too young. Others are avoided because their leaves have changed colour, suggesting age, disease, or bitterness. A few roots remain in the ground, perhaps to be collected later or allowed to regrow. This is not modern conservation written into law. It is practical memory. A gathering place stripped too heavily today may offer little tomorrow. Farther along the riverbank, the group reaches a patch of berries growing beneath thorny branches. The fruit is small and dark. One woman tastes a single berry, waits, then begins collecting. You follow carefully. The thorns catch at your skin. Leaves brush your forearms. The berries burst slightly between your fingers, leaving purple stains. Their smell is sharp and sweet, and when you taste one, the flavour arrives with a sourness strong enough to wake you more effectively than coffee. The child eats several before being reminded to place some in the container. This appears to be an ancient difficulty. Humanity has probably always struggled with the concept of saving snacks for later. The group continues moving slowly, covering less distance than you expected. Gathering is not simply walking until food appears. It involves constant decisions about effort. Is the patch worth the time? Is the food ripe? Can it be carried? Does it need fire? Will it spoil quickly? Energy spent collecting food must not exceed the energy gained from it, at least not too often. An intriguing detail from archaeological research is that starch grains can survive in tiny cracks on ancient stone tools under a microscope. These residues sometimes reveal that early humans processed plants that left almost no visible remains at a site. Roots rot, fruit disappears, leaves become soil, stone keeps faint traces of meals that would otherwise be forgotten. You reach a grove where several hard-shelled nuts lie beneath the trees. The older boy gathers them into a hide pouch. One woman picks up a rounded stone and places a nut on a flat rock. She strikes once. The shell cracks, but the kernel remains mostly intact. She hands the stone to you. Your first attempt sends the nut rolling into the grass. The child retrieves it with an expression of patient disappointment. Your second strike is too hard. Shell and kernel scatter together. The woman smiles and demonstrates again, using a controlled downward motion rather than brute force. You try once more. This time, the shell opens neatly. Useful skill often looks simple after someone else has spent years mastering it. The nuts may be eaten raw, roasted, or carried back to camp. They are valuable because fat is dense energy, especially when other food is scarce. Yet they are also seasonal. The group must remember when particular trees produce and which animals may reach them first. People here do not use a written calendar. They use flowering, rainfall, bird calls, animal births, and the changing condition of plants. One season may be remembered as the time when a certain fruit ripens. Another may be marked by insects emerging after rain. Knowledge of food is tied to knowledge of time. Researchers remain uncertain about the full variety of plants eaten by early Homo sapiens because plant remains preserve poorly compared with the bone and stone. Some sites suggest a broad diet, while others provide only fragments of the original picture. The absence of plant evidence does not mean plants were absent from daily life. It may simply mean dinner decayed. Near midday, heat settles over the riverbank. The group moves into shade beneath a tree. The bark feels rough against your back. Insects hum above the reeds. Mud dries on your hands and begins to crack around your fingers. Food is sorted. Bruised berries are eaten first. Firmer ones are saved. Roots are separated by size. A cluster of bitter leaves is wrapped apart from the rest, perhaps for later preparation or another use. One woman crushes a leaf between her fingers and rubs the scent onto her skin. It may discourage insects, soothe irritation, or serve some purpose you cannot identify. Not every plant is food. Some provide fiber for cord. Some offer resin, poison, scent, colour, or medicine. Some are useful for bedding or fuel. A plant can belong to several parts of life at once. The older woman back at camp may know which bark eases discomfort. Another person may know which seeds must be roasted before eating. Knowledge is distributed through the group, protected through repetition. You begin walking back beneath the heavier midday sun. The containers are fuller now. Weight pulls against your arms. The berries release a sweet smell as they warm. Roots knock softly against one another with each step. Nothing gathered today looks dramatic. There is no enormous prize, no triumphant return, and no sudden feast, yet these quiet foods may carry the group through the evening. That is the deeper rhythm of survival here. Life depends not only on rare moments of success, but on patient hands, remembered places, and the ability to recognize nourishment hidden beneath ordinary leaves. As the shelter comes into view, a child runs forward to meet you. The fire sends a thin thread of smoke into the bright air. You lower the container onto the ground and feel the relief in your shoulders. The berries shine darkly in the shade. The roots are laid near the hearth. The nuts are placed on a flat stone for cracking. The landscape has given up a little of its stored energy. Now the group will clean it, share it, cook it, and remember where it was found. The food gathered near the river has been sorted beside the shelter. But the day is not finished. By late afternoon, the heat begins to loosen its grip on the valley. Shadows stretch from the rocks, and the air carries the dry scent of grass warmed beneath the sun. A small group prepares to leave camp again. This time, you carry no basket. You follow 3 experienced trackers, a younger man, and a woman holding a long wooden spear tipped with stone. Their pace is quiet from the beginning. Conversation fades after the shelter disappears behind the trees. Hunting here is not a sudden chase through the landscape. It begins with reading. The ground holds signs left by animals that passed hours ago, or perhaps only moments ago. A print pressed into dust, a snapped stem, a patch of dung, or a faint line through grass can reveal direction and speed. The oldest tracker kneels beside a shallow hoof mark. He studies the shape, then brushes dust from its edge. The print is clear on one side and softened on the other. Nearby, another track presses deeper into the soil. You see a footprint. He sees an animal slowing near uneven ground. This skill is built through long attention. Studies of foraging communities show that expert trackers can often estimate species, number, direction, condition, and behavior from signs that an untrained observer might miss. The trackers do not rely on one mark. They compare many. A single bent blade of grass may mean nothing. Several bent in the same direction become a path. Fresh droppings may still hold warmth and moisture, while older signs crumble and fade. You move carefully behind them. Dry stems brush your legs. Dust rises around your feet, then settles. The spear shaft feels smooth where many hands have polished the wood. Ahead, the open country breaks into low bushes and scattered trees. The woman raises one hand. Everyone stops. A faint sound travels across the grass. Something between a snort and a cough. It is not close, but it is near enough to matter. The group shifts downwind so that your scent will not drift toward the animals. Wind is part of the hunt. You feel it against your cheek and watch the grass lean. Human smell carries far, especially to animals whose survival depends on noticing danger early. Today, you might check a weather app before leaving home. Here, the movement of air is checked against skin, leaves, dust, and smoke. No little symbol warns you that the wind has changed. The trackers lead you toward a shallow rise. You crouch below the crest and move slowly enough that your thighs begin to ache. At the top, the oldest man parts the grass with 2 fingers. Beyond him, several antelope graze in the lower ground. Their coats catch the amber light. One lifts its head, ears turning. Another steps sideways and flicks its tail. The group does not rush forward. A successful hunt requires more than courage. Distance, wind, cover, terrain, and the animal's alertness all matter. Wooden spears and stone points can be effective, but they demand closeness, patience, and coordination. The animals are faster than you and already know many ways to escape. Evidence from prehistoric sites shows that early humans hunted many animals, though they also scavenged, trapped smaller prey, gathered shellfish, and used whatever opportunities the local environment offered. There was no universal prehistoric menu. One region might support large grazers, another might provide fish, tortoises, birds, or small mammals. Success depended on flexibility rather than one heroic method. The youngest hunter shifts his weight. A dry stalk cracks beneath his heel. The sound is tiny, but the nearest antelope freezes. Every head rises. For several long seconds, the animals stand still. Then one turns, and the whole group moves away in a smooth burst, flowing across the grass until only dust remains. No one shouts. The young man closes his eyes briefly. The oldest tracker touches his shoulder once, then points toward the direction the animals ran. The lesson is not finished. Failure is ordinary. It teaches distance, timing, and restraint. A missed opportunity may be frustrating, but wasting energy in a hopeless pursuit would be worse. Some specialists propose that endurance pursuit mattered in certain hot environments, where humans could track animals over long distances until they overheated. Others caution that this method may have been limited to particular conditions and should not be treated as the standard form of hunting. Ambush, driving animals toward waiting hunters, using natural barriers, and taking advantage of weakened prey may all have mattered. The group descends from the rise and follows the trail. The prints are deeper now because the animals ran. Broken grass points forward. One hoof struck a stone, leaving a fresh, pale scar. Tracking asks the hunter to imagine movement from still marks. You begin to picture the animals passing through this space. One leapt over a low bush, another turned sharply. A smaller individual followed close behind. The landscape becomes a story written without words, near softer ground. The trackers stop again. Rounded prints cross the antelope trail. They show pads rather than sharp hoof edges. The group studies them in silence. A predator passed here earlier. The tracks are not fresh enough to cause alarm, but they change the mood. You look toward the bushes and notice how many places could hide a resting animal. Hunting means entering the same landscape used by creatures that also hunt. Humans are clever, social, and armed, but they are not invulnerable. Staying together matters. So does knowing when to turn back. One unusual clue preserved at archaeological sites comes from damage on animal bones. Cut marks made by stone tools, tooth marks from carnivores, and patterns of breakage can help researchers reconstruct whether humans hunted, scavenged, or shared access to carcasses with other predators. The bones become evidence of timing. Did people arrive first? Did carnivores feed before them? Were valuable parts carried away? The answers are rarely simple. The sun moves lower, and the trackers abandon the trail. The decision carries no shame. The camp needs people to return before darkness, and a hunt that continues too long can create more risk than reward. On the walk back, they remember where the antelope moved, where water lies beneath reeds, and where the predator crossed. A failed hunt still produces knowledge. Near camp, smoke becomes visible above the rocks. The smell reaches you before the shelter does. Roasted roots and warm ash drift through the evening air. The younger hunter walks quietly, but the oldest tracker says something that makes the others smile. Perhaps it is a joke about the broken stalk. Perhaps it is a reminder that tomorrow the grass may be kinder. You return without meat. No one reacts with surprise. The roots, berries, and nuts remain. Food is shared, tools are set down, information from the hunt is passed to those who stayed behind. As you sit beside the fire, you realize that survival does not depend on succeeding every time. It depends on noticing, remembering, returning, and trying again without wasting what the day has taught you. The evening meal is quiet, and the unsuccessful hunt soon becomes part of the ordinary flow of camp life. Roots soften in the ash, nuts are cracked against stone. The child who laughed at your digging earlier now sits close to the fire, carefully separating berry skins from the rest of the fruit with very serious concentration. Nearby, the oldest tracker places a stone point on a hide. One edge has been damaged. The break is small, but it matters. A chipped point may cut poorly, attach badly to a shaft, or fail when pressure is applied. Tomorrow's work depends on repairing it tonight. You move closer. Several pieces of stone lie beside the hide. Some are rounded nodules, others are thin flakes with edges sharp enough to slice skin. A larger stone rests in the tracker's hand. It is smooth on one side and marked by repeated impacts on the other. This is the hammer stone. The tracker selects a dark piece of rock and turns it beneath the firelight. He studies its shape, feeling along the surface with his thumb. Then he places it against his thigh, protected by folded hide, and strikes near the edge. The sound is light and precise. A flake separates. It falls onto the hide with a faint click. You expected brute force. Instead, the movement is controlled. The stone has not simply been smashed. It has been persuaded to break along a chosen path. Stone toolmaking is one of the clearest parts of the archaeological record because stone survives when wood, fibre, skin, and food usually decay. By 100,000 years ago, Early humans in several regions were producing carefully prepared tools using methods that required planning before the final flake was removed. The toolmaker must understand the stone before striking it. He considers angle, force, shape, and internal flaws. A blow placed too high may crush the edge. A blow placed too low may remove nothing useful. A hidden fracture can split the entire piece. You watch another flake come away. Its underside is smooth and slightly curved. Near the top is a small swelling created by the force of impact. The tracker inspects it, then sets it aside with several similar pieces. Some flakes may become cutting tools without much further work. Others are trimmed into points or scrapers. A scraper can clean hide, shape wood, or process plant material. A sharp flake can cut meat, slice fiber, or open tough skin. A point can be fixed to a spear. One piece of stone may serve several purposes before it becomes too small or damaged to use. Modern life encourages specialized objects. There is a tool for opening bottles, another for trimming paper, and probably a third tool for locating the first two tools after they disappear into a drawer. Here, versatility matters. You pick up a discarded flake. It is lighter than you expected. The edge catches the firelight in a thin, bright line. When you touch it gently, you understand how easily it could cut. The tracker sees your expression and makes a short sound of warning. You lower your thumb. Prehistoric education continues to favor immediate practical advice. The next stage is more delicate. The tracker holds the damaged point and uses a smaller tool to remove tiny chips from its edge. Each movement slightly changes the shape. He's not trying to make it perfectly symmetrical. He's restoring a useful cutting line while preserving as much stone as possible. Good material may be difficult to replace. The nearest source of suitable rock could be many hours away. Some stone found at prehistoric sites originated far beyond the immediate landscape, showing that people carried it, exchanged it, or moved repeatedly between known sources. This long-distance movement is easy to overlook. A small flint point may contain the memory of a journey, a meeting, or a place visited during another season. One fascinating discovery from several prehistoric sites is the use of pigments, plant resins, and mineral compounds in tool production. These substances may have helped bind stone points to wooden shafts. Creating a strong adhesive could involve mixing ingredients and controlling heat, which suggests careful experimentation. The spear beside you is more complicated than it first appeared. Its wooden shaft had to be selected, cut, straightened, and smoothed. The stone point had to be shaped. Binding material had to be twisted or prepared. Adhesive may have been added. Each part depended on knowledge gathered from different materials. A spear is not one invention. It is several ideas joined together. The woman who carried it during the hunt sits beside the tracker. She tests the repaired point against the shaft, turning it slightly. The fit is not correct, so she scrapes the wooden socket with another flake. Fine dust falls onto her knees. You hear the stone rasp against wood. The sound is soft and repetitive, almost soothing. Children watch from nearby. One boy holds two ordinary stones and copies the striking motion. His first attempt produces only a dull knock. His second does the same. An adult reaches over, changes the angle of the stone in his hand, and lets him try again. A tiny fragment breaks free. The boy looks at it as though he has created the moon. Toolmaking is learned through demonstration, imitation, and many unsuccessful strikes. The archaeological record preserves finished tools and broken pieces, but the broken pieces may be just as revealing. Clusters of flakes can show where people sat, what stages of work they performed, and whether beginners were practicing. Some researchers interpret unusually clumsy flakes as evidence of learners. Others warn that poor stone quality, hurried work, or specific tasks can create similar results. It is difficult to identify an individual child or novice from stone alone. The debate remains open because skill does not fossilize neatly. Still, you can see learning happening here. The boy tries again. This time, nothing breaks, but he adjusts his grip without being told. You examine the toolmaker's hands. Small cuts mark the fingers. Pale scars cross the knuckles. Stoneworking is precise, but sharp fragments can fly unexpectedly. The eyes also face risk from tiny chips, though experience reduces careless movements. The toolmaker sits so that flakes fall onto the hide rather than scattering through the sleeping area. When the work is finished, the sharp waste can be gathered and moved away from bare feet. Camp organization protects people from their own technology. That may be one of the earliest household rules: do not leave sharp things where everyone sleeps. The repaired point is finally attached to the spear. Binding is wrapped tightly around the joint. The woman pulls the cord, tests the point, then holds the shaft near the fire so gentle warmth can help set the adhesive. She turns it slowly, never allowing the material to scorch. The firelight shines along the stone edge. Tomorrow, the spear may be used for hunting, protection, or testing ground hidden by grass. Tonight, it rests across her knees as a completed piece of careful work. You look again at the scattered flakes. To a casual eye, they might resemble rubbish. Yet each one records a decision: where to strike, how hard to strike, which piece to keep, when to stop. Human intelligence is visible here not through monuments or writing, but through preparation. The finished shape exists in the maker's mind before it exists in the stone. The fire settles lower. Tools are wrapped in hide and placed near the shelter wall. Useful flakes are saved. Waste is gathered. The hammerstone remains beside the oldest tracker, its surface marked by years of repeated blows. You run one finger across a safe, rounded edge. It is cool despite the fire. In this small object, you feel the quiet difference between finding something in nature and transforming it with intention. Around you, the camp grows still. Stone clicks softly against stone one final time, and then the tools wait for morning. The repaired spear now rests against the stone wall, its point catching a little of the firelight. Around it, the camp turns toward food. The roots gathered near the river have been placed beneath warm ash. Nuts lie in a shallow hide beside the hearth. A small quantity of meat, saved from an earlier success, has been cut into narrow pieces and warmed on flat stones. Nothing is arranged like a modern meal. There are no plates, no table, and no single person announcing that dinner is ready. Food becomes available in stages. A root is lifted from the ash. A nut is cracked. A piece of meat is turned. People take, pass, wait, and watch. You sit near the outer edge of the circle. The fire gives off steady heat, though the evening air has begun to cool. Smoke drifts beneath the rock overhang and carries the smell of roasted plant flesh, fat, dust, and wood. A woman uses a pointed stick to pull one of the roots free. Its skin is blackened. She taps away the ash, then splits it open with a sharp flake. Steam rises from the pale center. The smell is sweet and earthy. She does not keep it. She breaks the root into several pieces. One portion goes to a child, another is passed to the older woman, a third reaches the man with the swollen ankle. Only then does the woman take a piece for herself. The gesture is simple, but it reveals the structure of the group. Food sharing has deep evolutionary importance. Humans often obtain food unevenly. One person may find a rich patch of plants while another returns with little. A hunt may succeed only after several failures. Sharing reduces the danger created by chance. It also creates expectation. You receive today because you may provide tomorrow. The group does not need to calculate every bite with perfect fairness. In fact, strict equality may not always be the goal. Age, illness, pregnancy, nursing, effort, and social obligation can all influence who receives what. What matters is that food circulates. You're handed a piece of roasted root. The outside is smoky and dry. The inside is soft enough to press apart with your tongue. Tiny grains remain between your teeth. After hours of walking, digging, and watching the toolmaker work, the warmth feels more satisfying than the flavour itself. Nearby, 2 children wait beside the nuts. An adult places one on a flat stone and strikes the shell. The first child receives the kernel. The second watches with intense concern until another nut is opened. Patience is encouraged. Though not always achieved, one child reaches too soon. A hand gently moves the child back from the striking stone. The adult says something brief, then continues working. No lecture follows. The rhythm of camp provides the lesson. Wait near the fire, watch the tool, keep fingers away. Your turn will come. An interesting clue about ancient eating comes from tooth wear. Microscopic scratches, pits, and polished surfaces on fossil teeth can help scientists infer the kinds of foods people chewed. Hard seeds, fibrous plants, grit, and meat leave different patterns. Though the picture is rarely perfect, teeth also preserve chemical traces. Stable isotope analysis can sometimes reveal broad patterns in diet, such as the kinds of plants eaten or whether marine foods contributed significantly. These methods do not reconstruct a complete menu, but they help show that prehistoric diets were often varied. The food before you supports that idea. Roots provide energy, nuts provide fat, berries add sweetness and moisture, meat contributes protein and valuable nutrients. In another landscape, the meal might include shellfish, fish, eggs, insects, seeds, or honey. There's no single diet followed by every early human group. The environment decides what is possible, and culture decides what is preferred. A small piece of meat is passed across the circle. It reaches the oldest tracker first. He tears off part with his teeth, then hands the rest onward. The portion is modest, but its smell changes the mood around the fire. Several people look toward it. Fat glistens along one edge. In a world where calories must be found, carried, processed, and defended, rich food has special value. People may favor fatty tissues, marrow, organs, or other energy-dense parts that modern diners sometimes ignore. One lesser-known detail from butchered animal bones is that early humans often broke long bones to reach marrow. Archaeologists recognize impact marks and characteristic fractures left when fresh bone was struck. The outside of a bone may seem unpromising. Inside, however, is a concentrated food source. A stone placed in the right spot can open it. This is not graceful work. But prehistoric life has limited interest in graceful table manners. The meat reaches you. You take a small bite and pass the rest to the person beside you. It is smoky, slightly tough, and warm only on one side. You chew slowly. No one asks whether you would prefer a different preparation. The answer is clearly no. Across the fire, a disagreement begins quietly. A young man reaches for a second portion before another person has received a first. The older woman makes a sound. He pauses, glances around the circle, and pulls his hand back. The moment passes. Custom controls behavior without written rules. Food sharing can create harmony, but it can also create tension. People notice generosity. They also notice greed. In a small community, reputation matters because everyone depends on future cooperation. Researchers differ on how formal food distribution may have been among ancient human groups. Some models emphasize wide sharing across the whole band. Others suggest that close relatives, hunting partners, or particular households may have had stronger claims. The evidence cannot reveal every social rule. Bones and hearths tell us what was eaten. They rarely tell us who received the first portion. Still, the arrangement around you suggests that sharing is not random. Certain people divide food. Certain people receive extra care. Children learn when to wait. Adults observe one another. The meal becomes a social event as much as a biological need. Voices rise around the fire. Someone repeats the moment when the antelope fled after the dry stalk cracked. The youngest hunter lowers his head while others smile. The story is already changing from failure into humor. Food makes space for this transformation. Hunger narrows attention. Eating allows people to talk, tease, repair embarrassment, and plan. The group discusses the next day through gestures and short exchanges. One person points toward the river, another indicates the higher ground. The repaired spear is lifted, examined, and set down again. Tomorrow's choices are being shaped while tonight's food is still warm. You notice that almost nothing is wasted. Nutshells are collected near the fire, perhaps to be burned. Bones are cracked or scraped. Tough plant fibers may be saved for cord. Ash from the hearth can help with cooking, cleaning, or protecting coals. Even scraps may attract animals, so refuse is placed away from the sleeping area. A camp must manage smell as carefully as food. Darkness deepens beyond the overhang. The children grow quieter. One leans against an adult, still chewing. Another holds an empty shell and traces its ridges with a fingertip. The meal ends gradually. There is no final course and no clear conclusion. People simply stop reaching. The remaining roots are covered. Few nuts are saved. Tools are wiped and set aside. You rest your hands near the warmth. Your stomach is not full in the modern sense, but the sharp edge of hunger has softened around you. The same is true for everyone else. The fire has turned scattered pieces of food into a shared evening. It has warmed roots, softened meat, opened conversation, and drawn the group into one close circle. For a little while, survival feels less like struggle. It feels like passing something from one hand to another and trusting that, when your turn comes, there will still be enough. The evening meal has faded into quiet conversation. Only a few glowing coals remain beneath the larger pieces of wood. Their warmth spreads slowly through the shelter, and the cool night air waits patiently beyond the entrance. You notice that the louder sounds now come from the children. One little boy has discovered a smooth pebble and is turning it over in both hands with complete fascination. A girl who spent the morning learning to shape a wooden point is now tracing lines through the dust with a stick. The youngest child has fallen asleep against an older woman's shoulder, completely unaware that the stars have filled the sky above the valley. For a few peaceful moments, the camp belongs to them. It is easy to imagine prehistoric childhood as harsh from beginning to end. Yet the scene before you tells a gentler story. Children still laugh. They still imitate adults. They still invent games from whatever happens to lie nearby. The difference is that almost every game prepares them for real life. The girl drawing in the dust pauses to watch her mother twist plant fibers together. Within seconds, she begins doing exactly the same thing with dry grass. Her little rope falls apart immediately. She tries again. No one criticizes her. Learning here comes through observation far more often than formal instruction. Modern children might spend hours watching videos to learn a new skill. Here, every lesson unfolds directly in front of them. Every meal, every journey, every repair, and every conversation becomes part of an education that lasts for many years. Human childhood is unusually long compared with that of most mammals. Young antelope can stand within hours of birth. Human infants require years before they can gather food safely, make useful tools, or recognize every danger hidden within the landscape. That long period of dependence is not a weakness. It allows enormous amounts of knowledge to be passed from one generation to another. You watch the older woman beside the fire. Her hair has begun to turn pale. Fine lines cross her face, especially around the eyes. One knee seems stiff whenever she stands. She no longer walks as quickly as the younger adults, yet no one treats her as unimportant. Several people ask her quiet questions during the evening. She answers with short gestures and calm words. A young mother brings over a handful of unfamiliar leaves collected earlier in the day. The older woman examines each one carefully. She keeps two. She hands the others back with a gentle shake of her head. You cannot know exactly why. Perhaps they are unsuitable for eating. Perhaps they belong to another season. Perhaps they serve a different purpose entirely. Experience often survives where strength begins to fade. Researchers studying both archaeology and modern hunter-gatherer societies frequently point out that older adults contribute knowledge that cannot easily be replaced. They remember distant water sources, seasonal changes, dangerous plants, successful campsites, and family relationships stretching back across many years. Memory itself becomes a valuable resource. The swollen ankle of the injured man has improved slightly. He still limps, but he can place more weight on his foot than yesterday. Another adult unwraps the simple binding around the joint and examines it carefully. The skin is still swollen. There is no modern hospital waiting over the next hill. Healing depends on rest, patience, careful observation, and whatever useful plants the group has learned to trust through generations of experience. You notice that the injured man has not been left behind. He continues travelling with everyone else. Food reaches him during meals. Others carry heavier loads while he recovers. The group invests time and effort in helping members who cannot contribute fully for a while. This choice may seem ordinary to us. It is anything but ordinary in nature. Many animals abandon injured companions because survival leaves little room for extended care. Humans often choose differently. Evidence from ancient skeletons tells remarkable stories. Some individuals lived for years after serious injuries that would have made independent survival almost impossible. Broken bones healed. Missing limbs show signs of long recovery. Severe disabilities appear in people who survived far longer than they could have managed alone. Someone cared for them. That quiet conclusion may be one of the most touching discoveries hidden inside prehistoric bones. Across the shelter, 2 boys are watching the older tracker sharpen a wooden spear. One boy copies the motion with a straight branch. The other pretends his stick is already a finished weapon and quietly stalks an imaginary animal around the fire. His prey appears unusually cooperative. It stands perfectly still because it exists only in his imagination. The adults pretend not to notice until the child triumphantly announces his invisible success. A few smiles spread through the circle. Even here, imagination has work to do. Children rehearse adult life through play. Running becomes practice for moving silently. Throwing becomes preparation for hunting. Copying gestures builds coordination long before genuine tools are placed into small hands. You glance toward the sleeping toddler. The child stirs briefly before settling again against the older woman's side. Several adults instinctively lower their voices. Nobody suggests this. It simply happens. The youngest members shape the rhythm of camp in subtle ways. One particularly interesting clue comes from tiny footprints preserved in ancient sediments at several archaeological sites. These prints show children walking beside adults, sometimes stopping, turning, or wandering slightly before returning to the group. For a brief moment, thousands of years disappear. A child becomes simply a child, curious, distracted, interested in everything except walking directly where the adults hoped. The oldest tracker reaches into a small hide pouch. Inside are several pieces of red ochre. He hands one to the girl who spent the afternoon practicing with wood. She rubs the mineral against a flat stone until fine powder gathers beneath her fingers. Then she looks toward the older woman for permission. A small nod follows, carefully. The girl presses one fingertip into the powder and leaves a tiny red mark on the back of her own hand. The colour glows warmly in the firelight. No one laughs. Whatever the mark means, it clearly matters. Perhaps it is decoration. Perhaps it carries symbolic meaning. Perhaps it is simply a child's delight in bright colour. The archaeological record preserves ochre at many prehistoric sites. But its exact purpose is not always obvious. It may have been used for body decoration, hide preparation, adhesives, artistic expression, or several purposes at once. Objects can carry more than one meaning. The fire burns lower. Parents gather children closer. The older woman gently lifts the sleeping toddler and lays the child onto a bed of grass covered with soft hide. She adjusts the edge of the hide beneath the small head with astonishing tenderness. The movement is so familiar that it almost disappears into the evening. You suddenly realize something. Every person sitting around this fire once fit into someone's arms exactly like that. Every skilled hunter, every careful gatherer, every respected elder, every storyteller, every toolmaker, all of them began as children who needed warmth, food, patience, and protection, without years of careful attention. None of the knowledge surrounding you could continue into another generation. The stars brighten above the shelter entrance. One child mumbles softly while dreaming. Another curls closer to a parent. Adults continue speaking in low voices, passing memories as naturally as they passed roasted roots only a little while ago. The camp feels peaceful, not because life is easy. It is not. Tomorrow will bring another search for food, another long walk, another uncertain day. Yet tonight reminds you that survival is built from more than strength. It grows from countless quiet acts of care. A hand guiding another hand, an elder answering a question, a parent sharing the warmest place beside the fire, a child watching carefully, storing away lessons that will one day become second nature. As the last flames settle into glowing embers, you understand that the future of humanity is sleeping only a few steps away, wrapped in hide, breathing softly beneath the ancient night. Morning returns gently. The first rays of sunlight reach only the tops of the trees, leaving the shelter itself wrapped in cool shadow. A faint mist lingers over the valley, and the air carries the familiar sense of damp earth, ash, and crushed grass. People wake one by one. A child stretches and rubs sleepy eyes. Someone feeds the fire with a handful of dry twigs. Another person steps outside and quietly studies the sky before saying a few words to the others. You have now spent several days with this small band. Certain patterns have become familiar. You recognize who usually wakes first. You know which child likes to sit closest to the fire. You can even predict where the oldest tracker will place his tools before beginning another day's work. Yet one mystery remains. You still cannot understand the language. The sounds flow together in ways your modern ears cannot separate. Some words are short and sharp. Others rise and fall with surprising rhythm. A few are accompanied by gestures that seem just as important as the sounds themselves. Even without understanding every word, you begin to notice something remarkable. Communication here is astonishingly efficient. A woman points toward the river, lifts 2 fingers, then touches her shoulder. Immediately another adult nods, picks up a container, and follows. Only a handful of sounds have been exchanged. The message has already been understood. Human language almost certainly existed in some form by 100,000 years ago. Although no recording has survived to tell us exactly how it sounded, the anatomy of our species, along with growing evidence for complex social behavior, strongly suggests that spoken communication had become an essential part of daily life. Exactly when language reached its modern richness remains one of the great unanswered questions in human evolution. Some researchers believe that fully developed language appeared much earlier than this period. Others suggest that it emerged gradually over many hundreds of thousands of years. Whatever the answer may be, the people around you clearly share ideas far beyond simple warning calls. They plan, they teach, they comfort, they joke. The oldest woman begins preparing a bundle of roots collected yesterday. A young boy watches closely. She names each one, holding it up for him to see. At least, you assume she is naming them. Perhaps she is explaining where they grow. Perhaps she is reminding him which ones must be cooked. The exact meaning escapes you. The lesson itself does not. The boy repeats each sound carefully. Sometimes he says it correctly, sometimes he stumbles. The older woman smiles and repeats the word more slowly. Children everywhere seem to possess the remarkable talent of asking the same question several times while somehow making every repetition sound completely new. The lesson continues patiently, nearby. 2 hunters discuss the coming day. You notice how often they use their hands. One traces a curve through the air, perhaps describing the shape of the valley. Another taps his chest before pointing toward distant hills. Their voices remain calm. Conversation flows naturally between spoken sounds and physical movement. Even today, people communicate this way without always realizing it. A raised eyebrow, a shrug, a smile, a finger pointing toward the door. Words rarely work alone. You begin helping prepare several bundles for travel. A woman hands you a strip of plant fiber. Without speaking, she demonstrates how to wrap it around a bundle of gathered roots. You imitate her movements. The first attempt comes loose almost immediately. She quietly unties the fibre and repeats the process. This time you notice that she twists the cord slightly before tightening it. You copy the motion again. The bundle holds together. No shared vocabulary was necessary. Observation filled the gaps. One particularly fascinating discovery comes from ancient engraved pieces of ochre and carefully shaped ornaments found at several African archaeological sites dating to roughly this period. These objects suggest that early humans were capable of creating and recognizing symbols whose importance extended beyond immediate survival. A mark could carry meaning. A shell could represent belonging. Colour itself might communicate identity. No written alphabet exists yet. Even so, information may already travel through objects as well as speech. The girl who received red ochre the previous evening still has a faint reddish stain on the back of her hand. This morning she notices it again. She smiles. Then she gently touches the same colour on the older woman's hand. The older woman laughs softly, whatever the gesture means. Both understand it instantly. You realize that every society develops countless tiny signals invisible to outsiders. A glance, a nickname, a familiar gesture, a shared memory. Modern families have them too. Someone says a single word at dinner, and everyone begins laughing except the confused guest. The same quiet magic exists here. As the sun climbs higher, the group prepares to leave the shelter for another day's work. Before anyone departs. The oldest tracker speaks briefly. Everyone watches him. His words are not loud. They do not need to be when he finishes. Several people nod. Others gather tools. The meeting lasts less than a minute. Clear communication often requires fewer words than confusion. You accompany the group along a narrow animal trail winding through scattered trees. While walking, conversation continues. Nobody appears uncomfortable with silence. People speak when necessary. Then simply listen to the sounds around them. Bird calls. Wind moving through dry branches. The distant splash of something entering water. Listening is as valuable as speaking. In fact, the two skills depend upon one another. A hunter who talks constantly may miss important sounds. A gatherer who never asks questions may overlook important knowledge. Balance matters. Not every exchange concerns survival at one point. The younger hunter says something that causes nearly everyone to laugh. Even the older tracker smiles. You cannot understand the joke. Still, the laughter itself needs no translation. Humour almost certainly stretches deep into human history. Living in close communities would have created endless opportunities for teasing, playful exaggeration, and stories retold slightly differently each time. Imagine trying to explain that famous snapped grass stalk from yesterday's unsuccessful hunt. By now, the antelope has probably become twice as fast, the stalk twice as loud, and the young hunter's expression twice as dramatic. Stories grow. That may be another ancient human tradition. Scientists studying the evolution of language often point to storytelling as one possible force shaping increasingly complex communication. Stories preserve information more effectively than isolated facts. Remember the valley with the twisted tree. Remember the river where crocodiles wait. Remember the season when berries appear after heavy rain. Knowledge wrapped inside narrative becomes easier to remember. The group pauses beneath a broad tree, while others drink. One woman begins humming softly. It is little more than a gentle pattern of repeated sounds. Soon another voice joins. The melody remains simple, almost hypnotic. There are no instruments, only human voices rising and falling together beneath the morning sky. No one knows exactly when music first appeared. Simple flutes made from bird bones survive from much later periods, but singing almost certainly leaves no trace in the archaeological record. Songs vanish the moment they end. Only the people who hear them carry them forward. You listen quietly. The tune drifts through warm air and disappears among the trees for a few moments. No one speaks. The silence feels comfortable. You have stopped worrying about understanding every word. Meaning exists in many forms. A careful hand guiding another. Shared laughter after a failed hunt. A melody carried on the wind. A glance exchanged across the fire. Language is more than vocabulary. It is trust built over countless conversations as the group rises and continues along the trail. You follow without hesitation. The words are still unfamiliar. The people no longer are. The morning song fades into the distance as the group continues its slow journey across the valley. The path curves gently upward, leading away from the river toward higher ground. The air feels drier here. The scent of damp earth gives way to warm stone, sunlit grass, and the faint resin of scattered shrubs growing between the rocks. You notice that no one seems uncertain about where to go. There are no signs carved into trees, no maps folded inside bags, no voices suggesting that perhaps everyone should stop and ask for directions. The landscape itself provides all the guidance the group needs. The oldest tracker pauses beside a weathered tree. He places one hand against its rough bark, then studies the branches above. Several birds flutter among the leaves before flying east. He watches them disappear. Only then does he continue walking, to someone unfamiliar with this place. The movement of birds might seem like a pleasant detail. To experienced travellers, it may reveal much more. Birds often gather near water. Some follow seasonal food, others react quickly when larger animals disturb the ground ahead. Nothing in nature exists completely on its own. Every living thing leaves clues for those patient enough to notice them. The trail reaches a broad hillside where the wind flows steadily across open grass. Here, you can see much farther than before. The river glitters below. Distant trees form dark green patches across the valley floor. Beyond them, hazy hills stretch toward the horizon until they disappear into pale blue sky. You stop without thinking. The view is breathtaking. Not because it has been carefully designed for visitors, because it has remained untouched for countless generations. There are no fences, no roads, no towers rising above the hills, only land shaped by rain, wind, animals, and time. One person kneels near a cluster of wild flowers. You expect them to gather blossoms. Instead, they examine several insects moving among the stems. The flowers themselves matter less than the tiny creatures visiting them. Insects often appear when certain plants bloom. Blooming plants announce the arrival of particular seasons. Seasons influence the movement of animals. The chain continues. One observation leads naturally toward another. Evidence gathered from pollen preserved in ancient lake sediments has allowed scientists to reconstruct prehistoric environments with surprising detail. Tiny grains trapped beneath mud can survive for tens of thousands of years, revealing which kinds of plants once covered an area. Entire landscapes have been rebuilt from microscopic traces. You look across the valley again. The grasses surrounding you are ordinary enough, yet each one may eventually leave behind clues for people living unimaginably far in the future. The wind freshens. You feel it lifting loose strands of hair away from your face. One woman closes her eyes briefly. She seems to be measuring the breeze against her skin. Then she looks toward the clouds gathering far to the west. They're larger than before. Their edges rise high into the afternoon sky. Dark shadows collect beneath them. Nobody speaks immediately. The group simply watches. Reading weather has become part of everyday survival. Rain brings fresh water, softer soil, and new plant growth. Heavy storms also create swollen rivers, slippery ground, and dangerous travel. A mistake in judging the weather could cost valuable time or expose everyone to unnecessary risk. Today, forecasts arrive through satellites, computer models, and colourful maps. 100,000 years ago, the sky itself provides every forecast available. Cloud shape, wind direction, humidity, the behaviour of birds, the smell carried through the air all become pieces of the same puzzle. The younger hunter points toward the western clouds. The older tracker nods once. Their decision is immediate. The group turns slightly south, choosing a route that avoids low ground where heavy rain might collect. No vote is taken. Experiences earn trust. As you descend the hillside, you notice several smooth stones arranged naturally along a dry stream bed. Children begin picking them up. At first you assume they are simply playing. Then one child proudly brings a particularly fine piece to an adult. This stone receives careful inspection before being placed into a carrying pouch. Not every useful material comes from obvious places. Good stone suitable for tool-making can be difficult to find. Certain riverbeds, exposed cliffs, and ancient deposits become valuable destinations because of the materials hidden there. People remember such places. They return again and again. One especially interesting discovery comes from chemical analysis of prehistoric stone tools. By comparing their composition with known rock sources, researchers have traced individual pieces across astonishing distances. Some travelled dozens of kilometres, others moved even farther, whether carried directly or exchanged between neighbouring groups. These stones reveal surprisingly wide social landscapes. The afternoon grows warmer. Grasshoppers leap ahead of every step. A lizard darts beneath a flat rock just before your foot reaches it. Everything around you seems alert. The group reaches a shallow hollow where several trees cast welcome shade. Everyone rests. Water containers are passed around. Someone quietly sharpens a wooden digging stick while another person repairs a woven carrying sling. Rest never feels completely idle. Small tasks fill the pauses between larger ones. You lean against the trunk of a broad tree. Its bark presses firmly against your back. Above you, leaves rustle softly. The breeze carries the scent of crushed herbs somewhere nearby. Without warning, one of the children points excitedly toward the sky. Several large birds circle high overhead. Their wings barely move. The adults watch carefully. Large scavenging birds sometimes gather where an animal has recently died. That does not always mean food is available. Predators may still be nearby. Even so, the information is worth remembering. Nature constantly broadcasts news. The challenge lies in learning how to read it. Researchers continue exploring exactly how early humans organized their seasonal movements across different environments. Some evidence suggests repeated visits to favored locations over many generations. Other findings point toward flexible travel shaped by rainfall, migrating animals, and changing resources. The pattern likely differed from place to place. Human adaptability may have been one of our greatest strengths. No single strategy worked everywhere. As the shadows begin lengthening once more, the western clouds finally reach the valley. The first cool gust arrives before the rain. Leaves turn a pale as the wind flips them over. Birdsong grows quieter. Even the insects seem to pause. The group increases its pace without rushing. Everyone knows another sheltered place lies ahead. You smell rain before you feel it. The scent rises from dry earth as moisture approaches. It is rich, cool, and strangely comforting. Then a few scattered drops strike the dust. Dark circles appear beneath your feet. Children laugh. Adults smile. The rain remains light, barely more than a passing shower, still. Everyone covers bundles of gathered plants with hides. Stone tools are tucked safely away. Nothing is wasted through carelessness. Within minutes the shower passes. Sunlight returns through thinning clouds. Tiny droplets cling to every blade of grass. The whole valley seems brighter than before. You notice a rainbow forming faintly above the distant hills. No one stops to admire it for long. Beautiful sights are welcome. Shelter before nightfall remains more important. The group continues walking. Water drips from leaves. Fresh scents fill the cooling air. The earth beneath your feet has softened just enough to preserve new footprints. By tomorrow morning, those prints may tell another story. Someone else will read them. Someone else will follow. The landscape is always writing. The people who know how to read it are never truly lost. The light rain leaves the valley washed clean. Drops cling to every leaf, and the scent of wet soil rises into the cooling evening air as the group walks. Your footsteps become quieter on the softened ground. Dust has disappeared for now, replaced by patches of dark earth that hold fresh impressions. The older tracker slows his pace. He studies the ground ahead for a moment before raising one hand. Everyone stops. Several footprints cross the trail. At first, they look remarkably similar to your own. 5 toes, a rounded heel, a familiar arch. You crouch for a closer look. These are human footprints. They were not made by anyone in your band. The prints are smaller than those of the tallest hunter, but larger than those left by the children. Some point toward the valley. Others angle away into the trees. The edges remain sharp. Whoever passed here did so recently. A quiet conversation begins among the adults. Voices remain low. No one appears frightened, but everyone becomes more attentive. The younger hunter adjusts the spear across his shoulder. The woman, who usually walks near the rear of the group, moves closer to the children. Nothing dramatic happens. The change is subtle. You can almost feel the camp becoming more alert without becoming anxious. During this period of prehistory, modern humans were not alone in the world. Different populations of humans occupied different regions, each following its own long evolutionary path. In Africa, Homo sapiens had already become well established, farther north and west. Neanderthals thrived across large parts of Europe and Western Asia. Other human groups also lived across parts of Asia, though much about their lives remains uncertain. The world contained more than one kind of human. That idea feels strange to modern minds. Today, every person belongs to the same surviving species 100,000 years ago. Meeting another human did not always mean meeting someone exactly like yourself. The footprints before you, however, were almost certainly left by people very much like the band you're traveling with. The adults continue examining the trail. One tracker kneels beside a print where rainwater has collected. He empties the water with 2 fingers and studies the impression beneath. Another follows the direction of broken grass leading toward a nearby stand of trees. No hurried decisions are made. The signs must be understood first. You begin wondering about the people who passed here. How many were there? Were they families, hunters-travellers simply passing through? Perhaps they paused beside the same river only yesterday. Perhaps their children laughed over the same smooth stones now resting beneath your feet. The land is vast, yet people occasionally cross one another's paths. Interactions between neighbouring groups were probably varied. Some meetings may have involved sharing information, exchanging partners, or visiting relatives. Others may have been cautious. Resources such as water, food, and suitable campsites could create tension when conditions became difficult. Human relationships have rarely been simple. The older woman notices several snapped branches nearby. She studies them carefully before speaking. The others seem satisfied. The group resumes walking, though now the children remain closer to the adults than before. The change happens naturally. Nobody announces a new rule. People simply adjust. A fascinating clue about prehistoric encounters comes from objects found far from their original source. Certain kinds of stone, shells, and pigments appear in places where they do not naturally occur. While long journeys can explain some of these discoveries, others hint that neighbouring communities may have exchanged materials, either directly or through chains of contact stretching across large regions. Ideas may have travelled alongside objects, so may stories. As evening approaches, the trail leads toward another rocky outcrop overlooking a narrow valley. The group pauses to rest. From this higher ground, you can see smoke rising far in the distance. It is faint, a thin grey line against the evening sky. The younger hunter notices it immediately. Several others follow his gaze. Smoke often means people. Lightning can start fires, of course, but this narrow column rises too steadily. Someone else is camped somewhere beyond the hills. You cannot see them. They cannot see you. Yet both groups now know they are not alone. The feeling is surprisingly comforting. The world seems slightly less empty. One child points toward the distant smoke and asks a question. The older woman answers while drawing shapes in the dirt. Perhaps she's explaining who lives beyond those hills. Perhaps she's recalling relatives met many seasons ago. Or perhaps she's simply reminding the child that not every fire belongs to strangers. Family networks may stretch farther than little feet have ever walked. Genetic studies of ancient human remains suggest that people often formed connections beyond their immediate camp. Such relationships helped maintain healthy populations and strengthened social ties across wider landscapes. No community could remain completely isolated forever. The evening breeze freshens again. It carries the scent of damp grass mixed with distant wood smoke. For a moment, you imagine another group settling around its own fire, children curling beneath hides, someone repairing a spear, someone roasting roots gathered earlier in the day, someone telling a familiar story while sparks drift upward into the dark. The details may differ. The rhythm would probably feel familiar. You continue walking until the group reaches a shallow spring flowing between smooth rocks. Fresh water gathers quietly before disappearing beneath reeds farther downhill. Everyone drinks. Containers are filled. The youngest children splash their hands despite receiving several amused reminders that the water is for drinking, not for decorating everyone nearby. Some habits appear timeless. The oldest tracker examines the soft mud beside the spring. More footprints. These are older. Rain has blurred their edges. Animal tracks cross them in several places. The information is no longer urgent. It simply becomes another memory added to many others. This spring has been visited before. It will almost certainly be visited again. Researchers can continue investigating how frequently neighbouring human communities interacted during this period. The archaeological evidence differs from region to region. Some areas suggest repeated contact, while others indicate long periods of separation. Population sizes were relatively small, and enormous distances often lay between groups. Meeting another band may have been an important event rather than an everyday occurrence. As darkness begins settling across the valley, everyone prepares another temporary camp. The routine now feels familiar. Branches are gathered, sleeping places are cleared. The fire is rebuilt from carefully protected embers. Children help collect dry grass. Adults inspect the surrounding ground one final time. The distant smoke has disappeared into the evening haze. Perhaps the other group has settled for the night. Perhaps they're still walking beneath the same stars that will soon appear above you. The thought lingers pleasantly. You are part of one small circle, gathered around one modest fire. Beyond the hills, another circle may be doing exactly the same, separated by valleys, rivers, and forests, connected by shared humanity. As the first stars brighten overhead, the shelter fills once more with quiet voices and warm light. The footprints you found today slowly fade beneath cooling air. Tomorrow they may soften further beneath dew. Soon they will disappear altogether. Yet the people who left them continue walking somewhere beyond sight, carrying their own memories, their own children, and their own stories into another ancient evening. Morning arrives beneath a blanket of thin clouds. The sunlight is softer than usual, spreading gently across the valley without the sharp brightness of previous days. Cool air lingers beneath the trees, and tiny droplets still cling to the leaves after the night's moisture. The camp wakes slowly. A child yawns so widely that everyone nearby smiles. Someone adds another branch to the fire. The familiar scent of warm smoke begins drifting through the shelter once again. You've started noticing something about the people around you. They rarely complain. That does not mean life is easy. Quite the opposite. Every day asks something from them. They walk long distances. They search for food. They watch the weather. They remain alert to animals and changing conditions. Yet most discomfort is accepted as part of ordinary life rather than treated as an unexpected interruption. The man who injured his ankle several days ago stands carefully. He still favours one leg, but each step looks steadier than before. The swelling has gone down. He smiles quietly when another member of the group notices his improvement. Recovery has become a shared achievement. Illness and injury are constant companions in this world. A twisted ankle can slow an entire journey. A deep cut from a sharp stone may become infected. A broken bone changes not only one person's life, but also the daily work of everyone nearby. Without antibiotics or modern surgery, even injuries that seem minor today can become serious. That knowledge encourages caution. People think carefully before climbing unstable rocks. They carry sharp tools with respect. They watch where they place their feet. The landscape forgives very little carelessness. Human skeletons recovered from prehistoric sites reveal that many individuals experienced broken bones, worn joints, damaged teeth, and other injuries during their lives. Remarkably, many of these wounds show clear signs of healing, demonstrating that people often survived long after suffering serious accidents. Healing takes time. Time requires support. Support requires community. The connection is simple. You leave camp with the older woman and 2 younger adults. Today's task is not hunting, instead. They are searching for several plants growing in damp ground beyond the spring. The older woman recognizes the location almost immediately. She kneels beside a cluster of broad leaves and begins examining their stems. Some she ignores, others she gathers carefully. Each plant receives close attention: shape, color, smell, texture. You notice her rubbing one leaf gently between her fingers before bringing it close to her nose. Knowledge here depends on every sense. Modern pharmacies organize medicine neatly inside labeled containers. The prehistoric world hides useful substances among thousands of ordinary plants. Remembering which are helpful may take decades. The older woman places several leaves inside a folded hide. Later, she gathers bark from a nearby shrub. The inner surface has a faint, pleasant scent. She smiles with quiet satisfaction. No explanation follows. You simply trust that she knows why these materials matter. Exactly how early humans treated illness remains difficult to reconstruct because plants rarely survive in the archaeological record. Even so, evidence from later traditional societies, along with occasional chemical traces and indirect clues, strongly suggest that medicinal knowledge has deep roots in human history. People have always observed nature closely. If one leaf soothed pain, if one root eased stomach discomfort, if one bark reduced swelling, someone remembered, then someone taught another person. Knowledge became inheritance. As you return toward camp, the younger adult brushes away several biting insects. The older woman crushes a handful of fragrant leaves and rubs them gently onto her arms. The scent spreads through the air. Within moments, she offers some to you. You do the same. Whether the insects truly dislike it or simply become distracted, you cannot say. Either way, fewer of them land afterward. Sometimes practical experience arrives long before scientific explanation. Back at camp, another small problem demands attention. One child has a splinter buried deep in a finger. The child examines it with enormous seriousness, as though the entire future of humanity now depends upon one stubborn piece of wood. The older tracker sits beside the child, using the tip of a sharp stone flake. He carefully removes the splinter. The child watches every movement without making a sound. When the tiny fragment finally comes free, the child holds it up triumphantly. The adults laugh softly. Victory has many sizes. Not every challenge involves dangerous animals or long journeys. Some involve very determined splinters. Nearby, the recovering man begins testing his ankle more confidently. He walks several slow circles around the camp. Another adult watches closely, not because of distrust, because recovering too quickly can reopen an injury. Patience remains part of healing. One especially touching discovery comes from prehistoric skeletons, showing severe tooth loss long before death. Some individuals survived despite losing many teeth, suggesting they received softer foods prepared by others. Even eating could become a shared responsibility. Compassion leaves subtle marks, not on stone, not on wood, on bones that reveal people lived longer than they could have managed alone. The afternoon grows warmer. Children gather beneath the shade of a broad tree. One little girl trips while chasing a beetle across uneven ground. She lands with a surprised expression rather than a frightened one. An older child immediately helps her stand. The scrape on her knee looks uncomfortable but shallow. A little dust is brushed away. The adventure continues. Children seem remarkably resilient. So do beetles. As the day passes, you begin noticing countless small acts of care that would be easy to overlook. Someone adjusts another person's carrying strap. Someone quietly shares water. Someone removes a thorn from another's foot. Someone checks that the oldest woman has enough shade during the hottest hour. These moments leave almost no trace for archaeologists. Stone tools survive. Bones survive. Kindness rarely fossilizes, yet it must have existed. Otherwise, many of the skeletons uncovered across prehistoric sites could never have healed. Researchers continue exploring how much social care early human communities provided. The evidence grows stronger with each carefully studied discovery. But many questions remain unanswered. Every new fossil adds another piece to a story that is still unfolding. As evening approaches, clouds gather once more. The temperature falls pleasantly. The recovering hunter joins the others carrying small bundles of firewood. His steps remain cautious, still. Today he carries something again. No one applauds. They simply make room for him within the work. Recovery often arrives quietly. You sit beside the fire while the older woman sorts the plants collected earlier. Some are laid near the edge of the warmth to dry. Others are wrapped carefully inside fresh leaves. The fragrant bark is placed separately. She works slowly, almost meditatively, watching her. You realize that healing begins long before illness appears. It begins with remembering where useful plants grow. It continues by teaching younger generations. It survives because someone chooses to pay attention. The fire glows brighter as darkness settles over the valley. The injured man stretches his leg comfortably. The child with the splinter proudly examines an entirely healthy finger. The little girl who fell earlier has already forgotten the scrape on her knee. Life continues, not because danger has disappeared, because people continue helping one another through it. As stars emerge above the shelter, the camp settles into another peaceful evening. The day's smallest victories become tomorrow's quiet strength. A healing ankle, a removed splinter, a handful of carefully gathered leaves. None of them will appear in history books. Yet together, they have carried humanity safely into another ancient night. The evening settles gently over the valley. The last light lingers on the tops of distant hills, while the ground around the camp slips into cool blue shadow. A breeze stirs the grass, carrying the scent of smoke, damp earth, and the faint sweetness of flowering shrubs that opened as the day cooled. The fire crackles softly. Children who were lively only moments ago now grow quieter. One leans against a parent's shoulder. Another traces circles in the dust with a smooth stick before losing interest and curling beneath a hide. The adults are not finished with the day. Some continue repairing tools. Others inspect bundles gathered during the afternoon. A few simply sit together, watching the flames rise and fall. You notice something resting beside the older woman's feet. It is a small piece of red ochre, worn smooth from frequent handling. She picks it up almost absent-mindedly. Turning toward a younger woman, she lightly brushes the mineral across the back of her hand, leaving a soft reddish streak that catches the firelight. The younger woman smiles, without speaking. She reaches for the ochre herself. Soon another pair of hands carries similar marks. No one appears rushed. No one behaves as though this is a ceremony requiring strict attention. It feels woven naturally into the rhythm of the evening, as ordinary as preparing food or feeding the fire. Colour has become part of daily life. Across several African archaeological sites dating to this broad period, archaeologists have uncovered pieces of ochre showing signs of grinding and scraping. Some still bear polished surfaces where they were repeatedly rubbed against stone. These discoveries suggest that people valued pigments enough to gather, carry, and prepare them with care. Exactly why they did so may have differed from one community to another. Perhaps colour marked important occasions. Perhaps it expressed beauty. Perhaps it identified family connections or personal achievements. Human actions rarely have only one purpose. You glance toward the children. One little boy has noticed the adults using the ochre. He quietly picks up a reddish pebble from the ground and pretends to draw on his own arm. The pebble leaves no colour at all. He studies it with complete seriousness before deciding the stone has somehow failed him. The older tracker notices, without a word. He exchanges the useless pebble for a tiny fragment of genuine ochre. The child's eyes brighten carefully, almost reverently. He presses the colour against the back of his hand. The mark is uneven, a little too thick in one place, barely visible in another. It is perfect. Nobody rushes to correct it. Learning often begins with imperfect attempts. The fire burns steadily while darkness deepens overhead. Above you, the stars appear one by one. The familiar constellations of your own time are present. Although no one here knows them by the names you learned as a child, they almost certainly have stories of their own. Perhaps certain stars announce the coming rains. Perhaps another cluster reminds people when particular fruits ripen. Perhaps some lights in the sky belong to ancestors remembered through generations. The stars themselves have not changed, only the stories surrounding them. A young woman reaches into a woven pouch and removes several small shells pierced with tiny holes. They are threaded carefully onto a strip of fibre. She checks each knot before placing the strand around her neck. The shells make almost no sound. Only the faintest click accompanies her movement. Their journey, however, may have been remarkably long. Some ornaments discovered at prehistoric sites originated far from the places where they were eventually buried. Mean shells have appeared well inland, suggesting that people either travelled considerable distances or acquired treasured objects through connections with neighbouring communities. Not everything carried across the landscape served a practical purpose. Some things simply mattered. You find that strangely comforting. Modern life often separates useful objects from meaningful ones. Here, the distinction may not exist so clearly. A beautifully shaped shell can please the eye while reminding its owner of distant shores. A piece of red pigment can decorate the skin while strengthening a shared identity. Beauty itself becomes useful. The oldest woman gestures for one of the girls to sit beside her. From a small bundle wrapped inside soft hide, she removes several bird feathers. Each feather differs slightly. One is long and grey. Another shines black in the firelight. A smaller feather carries delicate white markings along its edge. The girl examines them carefully. The older woman demonstrates how to bind one feather into a narrow strip of woven fibre. The girl's first knot slips loose. She tries again. This time the feather remains firmly attached. Her smile spreads slowly across her face. No celebration follows, only quiet satisfaction. Knowledge continues moving gently from one pair of hands to another, nearby. The recovering hunter studies a smooth stone whose surface bears several shallow engraved lines. He runs a thumb across them thoughtfully before placing the stone back into his pouch. The marks may have no symbolic meaning at all. Perhaps they simply improved his grip. Yet discoveries from several ancient sites remind us that people sometimes engraved simple patterns onto stone, bone, or ochre long before writing existed. Parallel lines, crosshatch designs, repeating shapes. Whether these patterns represented ownership, memory, decoration, or something now lost to time cannot always be determined. Their existence alone tells an important story. Human minds had begun shaping ideas that extended beyond immediate survival. You become aware of the sounds surrounding the camp. A night bird calls somewhere uphill. Insects create an endless, gentle chorus beneath the grass. The fire pops as trapped moisture escapes from a branch. Someone begins humming quietly. The melody has no obvious beginning or end. It drifts comfortably through the evening. Another voice joins for only a few moments before fading again. No audience gathers, no performance is expected. Music belongs to everyone. You think about how difficult such moments are for archaeology to preserve. A woven bracelet eventually rots away. Paint fades beneath rain and sunlight. Songs disappear the instant the final note is sung. A smile shared between friends leaves no trace in the soil, yet those fleeting experiences may have shaped daily life just as much as stone tools or hunting skills. Sometimes the richest parts of being human survive only indirectly. They echo through objects, patterns, and tiny fragments left behind. A child suddenly gasps with delight. A firefly has drifted into the camp. Its pale green light flashes briefly before vanishing into the darkness. Soon another appears, then another. The children watch silently, almost afraid that speaking too loudly might frighten the tiny lights away. Even the adults pause to admire them. Wonder requires no explanation. The older tracker leans back, resting comfortably against a smooth rock. His face glows softly in the firelight. You realize that nearly every object around the camp carries two stories. A spear is a hunting tool. It is also the result of years spent learning. A shell is an ornament. It is also a memory of another place. A streak of ochre decorates the skin. It also connects one person to another through shared custom. Nothing exists entirely by itself. Everything belongs to a larger web of relationships. The fire gradually settles into glowing embers. People move closer together as the night cools. Children sleep peacefully beneath carefully arranged hides. Adults exchange a few final words before silence slowly spreads across the camp. Above, countless stars continue their slow journey across the sky. Just as they have for generations beyond counting, you sit quietly beside the fading warmth. The beauty surrounding you is not grand in the way modern museums display beauty. It is quieter than that. It lives in worn shells polished by careful hands, in feathers tied with patient fingers, in red pigment gently shared between generations, in songs carried only by memory. Long before monuments rose from stone, people were already finding ways to leave their mark upon the world and upon one another, not through towering buildings or written names, but through beauty, meaning, and the simple desire to belong. Dawn arrives almost unnoticed. The stars fade one by one until only the brightest remain above the western hills. The eastern horizon glows with a pale ribbon of gold, and a cool breeze brushes across the valley, carrying the earthy scent left behind by yesterday's rain. Around the camp, people are already awake. The fire's been coaxed back to life from the glowing embers protected through the night. Thin curls of smoke drift upward before disappearing into the still morning air. Today feels different. There is no urgency, yet everyone moves with quiet purpose. Bundles are tied a little more carefully. Carrying slings are checked twice. Water containers are filled until they feel satisfyingly heavy. No one says aloud that the group is preparing for a longer journey. They do not need to. Every movement reveals it. The shelter that has protected everyone for several nights will soon be empty. You help roll sleeping hides into neat bundles. The grass beneath them has flattened where people rested, leaving temporary outlines that will slowly disappear over the coming days. Within a week, little evidence of this camp may remain. Wind will scatter ashes, rain will soften footprints, fresh plants will rise where people once slept. Nature patiently reclaims nearly everything. The oldest tracker stands at the edge of the camp, studying the hills ahead. He's looked in that direction several times already this morning. The younger hunters quietly join him. Nobody points dramatically. Nobody debates at length. Their discussion lasts only a short while before everyone begins lifting their loads. The decision has already been made. It is time to move. Human history is often imagined as a series of permanent homes. For people living 100,000 years ago, home could be something much more flexible. It might be a familiar valley visited many times across the years. It might be a favoured shelter remembered by several generations. Or it might simply be wherever trusted companions gathered around a fire before nightfall. Home travelled with the people. The path leads gradually uphill through scattered woodland. Morning sunlight filters between the branches, creating shifting patterns across the forest floor. Birds announce the new day from hidden perches. Some calls are cheerful and repetitive. Others echo through the trees with deep, haunting notes. The children occasionally pause to investigate interesting stones or unusual mushrooms before being gently encouraged to continue. Even on an important journey, curiosity refuses to stay behind. You glance back one final time. The abandoned camp is already becoming part of the landscape. Smoke no longer rises. From this distance, the shelter blends naturally into the surrounding rocks. Someone passing a few weeks from now might never guess that families laughed, rested, learned, and dreamed there. Most moments in human history have vanished this quietly. As the trail climbs higher, the forest begins thinning. The trees stand farther apart, allowing wider views across the countryside. The valley where you spent the past several days now stretches behind you like a painted landscape. The winding river catches the morning light. Beyond it, distant hills fade into a soft blue haze. You feel an unexpected sense of gratitude. Although the valley was never truly yours, it has become familiar. Leaving even a temporary home carries a small sadness. The older woman notices your lingering glance. She smiles gently before touching your shoulder. Then she points toward the hills ahead. Her message needs no translation. There is always another place waiting. One of the most remarkable qualities of early Homo sapiens was adaptability. Our ancestors occupied environments ranging from coastal regions to grasslands, forests, river valleys, and eventually deserts, mountains, and colder climates. Rather than relying on a single way of life, they adjusted their habits to match the landscapes around them. Flexibility became one of humanity's greatest strengths. The journey continues through open grassland where wildflowers sway in the breeze. Butterflies drift lazily between blossoms. Grasshoppers spring away from every approaching footstep. A small fox freezes for an instant upon seeing the group before disappearing into taller grass with astonishing speed. Life surrounds you from every direction. Every creature is following its own path through the morning. The band pauses beside a cluster of weathered rocks. Water trickles from a narrow crack. forming a tiny pool no larger than a cooking bowl. Everyone drinks sparingly. No one wastes a drop. The youngest children splash their fingers despite several amused looks from the adults. Some lessons seem destined to be repeated forever while resting. The older tracker reaches into his pouch and removes a small stone unlike the others. Its surface is smooth and dark, marked by faint scratches gathered over years of use. He studies it briefly before placing it back with obvious care. You wonder how long he's carried it. Perhaps it came from another valley visited in his youth. Perhaps it was given to him by someone who is no longer alive. Certain objects become companions through time. They gather memories invisible to everyone except their owner. Excavations have revealed that some stone sources were visited repeatedly across many generations. Certain locations offered particularly fine material for making sharp tools, encouraging people to return again and again. These places became familiar landmarks woven into seasonal journeys. The landscape itself held memory. As midday approaches, the air grows warmer. Heat shimmers gently above sunlit rocks. The group slows beneath a stand of broad trees whose leaves whisper softly whenever the breeze returns. Lunch is simple. Roasted roots saved from the previous evening, fresh berries gathered along the trail, a few edible seeds collected from nearby grasses. Nothing is hurried. Travel requires steady energy rather than speed. One child discovers a fallen bird feather glowing bright white against the darker leaves. She proudly carries it to the older woman, instead of keeping it herself. The older woman carefully tucks the feather into the child's woven belt. No words are exchanged. The gesture says enough. Treasure deserves an owner. The feather bounces happily with every step afterward. Later in the afternoon, the trail reaches a broad ridge overlooking unfamiliar country. Everything beyond this point feels new. Different clusters of trees, different bends in distant streams, different rocky outcrops catching the afternoon sun. The younger children stare ahead with open curiosity. For them, every new valley offers another place to explore. The older adults study the land more carefully. They notice water, shelter, animal paths, the direction of the wind. Beauty and practicality exist side by side, far below. Several antelope move gracefully across an open meadow. The hunters pause only briefly. Today is not the day for pursuit. Finding a safe place before darkness matters more. Good decisions often involve choosing what not to do. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening. Long shadows stretch across the hills. The air cools enough that carrying heavy bundles becomes easier again. Then, just ahead. The older tracker smiles. Nestled beneath a rocky slope lies a shallow shelter overlooking a small stream bordered by reeds. Fresh water, nearby trees. Open ground with good visibility, protection from prevailing winds. It is not perfect. Few places ever are. It is good enough. That has always mattered more. People begin setting down their burdens. Children race toward the stream before being called back until the area has been checked carefully. Branches are gathered. Firewood is stacked. Sleeping places are cleared. Within a remarkably short time, an empty shelter begins transforming into another temporary home. You realize that this simple act has repeated itself thousands upon thousands of times across countless generations. A family arrives, a fire is lit, stories begin, children grow, then, when the season changes or food becomes scarce, everyone moves again. The journey itself is part of life rather than an interruption to it. As the first evening stars appear above the unfamiliar valley, the fire sends its warm glow into the gathering darkness. Tomorrow this place will no longer feel unfamiliar. Soon it will hold its own memories, and one day, when it's time to leave again, another horizon will quietly invite the band onward. The new shelter already feels less unfamiliar. A single evening has transformed an empty hollow beneath the rocks into a place of warmth and quiet routine. The fire glows steadily in its shallow pit. Bundles rest neatly against the stone wall. Fresh footprints surround the entrance, overlapping until it is impossible to tell who stepped where first. You sit near the edge of the camp while twilight settles over the valley. The stream below murmurs softly as it winds between reeds and smooth stones. Somewhere beyond the trees, frogs begin their nightly chorus. Insects answer from the tall grass, weaving a gentle blanket of sound that seems to rise with the darkness itself. No one speaks very loudly. There is no need. After another full day of walking, gathering, observing, and learning, silence has become its own companion. The children fall asleep one after another, the smallest curls beneath a hide beside a parent. Another rests with one hand still loosely wrapped around the white feather discovered earlier that afternoon. Even in sleep, small treasures are difficult to let go. The adults remain awake a little longer. One person adds another piece of wood to the fire. Another quietly checks that the glowing embers are spread evenly beneath the larger logs. The recovering hunter stretches his ankle and smiles, almost forgetting that only days ago each step caused pain. The older woman looks around the camp with calm satisfaction. Nothing extraordinary happened today. That is precisely what makes it extraordinary. Most human lives, whether 100,000 years ago or today, are built not from dramatic moments but from ordinary ones repeated with care. Meals shared, lessons passed along, journeys completed, children protected, friends remembered. Tomorrow, this band will wake again. Someone will fetch water, someone will search for edible plants. Hunters will study fresh tracks crossing the damp ground. Children will discover another interesting stone that seems, for several wonderful minutes, to be the most important object in the entire world. Life will continue exactly as it has for countless generations. Looking back across the days you've spent here, you begin noticing how deeply connected everything has been. Fire was never only about warmth. It gathered people together. Stone tools were never only sharp edges. They carried skill from one generation to the next. Food was never simply fuel. Every meal strengthened friendships and families. The landscape was never empty. Every hill, stream, tree, and rocky shelter held memories accumulated through many journeys. Even the night sky served as more than decoration. Its steady movements reminded people that seasons changed, animals migrated, plants returned, and tomorrow would eventually arrive. Modern life often divides knowledge into separate subjects: history, biology, geography, astronomy, medicine. Here, those boundaries disappear. Understanding plants helps feed a family. Watching birds reveals changes in weather. Knowing the stars helps guide travel. Remembering stories preserves knowledge that cannot be carried in the hand. Everything belongs together. That may be one of humanity's oldest lessons. Our ancestors survived not because they were the fastest animals or the strongest creatures walking the earth. They survived because they observed, they adapted, they remembered. Most importantly, They cared for one another. Across thousands of generations, those simple qualities carried small groups of people into forests, across grasslands, beside rivers, through changing climates, and eventually into nearly every corner of the world. You are one tiny visitor in their story, yet their story has also become yours. Every language spoken today began somewhere within conversations like those you heard around these fires. Every family carries echoes of evenings when older hands guided younger ones. Every journey taken by modern people reflects ancient footsteps that slowly expanded humanity's understanding of the world. The distance between your own life and theirs suddenly feels much smaller than you first imagined. You look up. The stars fill the sky with quiet confidence. They shone above these people. They shine above you now. Only the centuries between have changed. The fire settles lower. Orange embers pulse softly beneath white ash. One final branch shifts with a gentle crack. A shower of tiny sparks rises into the darkness before disappearing among the countless stars overhead. The camp sleeps. The valley breathes. Night settles completely across the ancient landscape. Now, allow yourself to remain there for just a little longer. Imagine the cool air resting gently against your skin. Feel the steady warmth of the fire beside you, never too hot, never too cold, simply comforting enough to ease away the weight of the day. Listen to the stream flowing over smooth stones with the same quiet rhythm it followed long before this camp arrived and long after it will be gone. The insects continue their endless evening chorus. A breeze brushes softly through the grass. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls once before the silence returns. There is nothing you need to accomplish here. No destination waiting beyond the next hill. No schedule to keep, only the peaceful certainty that, for this one night, everyone is safe together beneath the wide sky. As your breathing slows, imagine the glowing embers growing softer and dimmer. The stars seem brighter with every passing moment. The valley becomes wrapped in silver moonlight. The hills stand quietly on every side. Keeping watch without asking for anything in return, you feel yourself becoming lighter, as though the worries of the modern world have remained far away, unable to cross the thousands of years separating your life from this peaceful camp. Here, time moves at the pace of flowing water and changing seasons. Nothing rushes, nothing demands. Everything simply is. Let the sounds of the ancient night drift gently around you. The fire, the water, the wind, the slow breathing of those sleeping nearby. Carry that calm with you as your own thoughts become quieter, softer, and more distant. The valley grows still. The stars continue their endless journey overhead, and somewhere in the deep past, beneath the same sky we all share, humanity sleeps peacefully beside a fading fire. Sweet dreams,